want my set.
Were you at the COA today for the?
I was, but I didn't take a pair.
Oh,
Even though they was.
I did, I gave him the mic. Are we good?
Yeah, you're all good.
Okay. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Welcome to the St. Patrick's Day, everybody. We're all rigged up here. Select Board meeting, March 17th at 7 p.m. Before we get into the whole part of the agenda, I want to make a couple of announcements. So, I want to talk about the polar plunge. If anybody had the inclination to attend the polar plunge on Saturday morning at the fire station, was an incredible time. Put on by police and fire. They had a ton of people there. I just want to shout out to all the people that show up, the police, the fire, chiefs. Their day off, they participate, which means they donate, so they take money out of their pockets. And it was just a great time, and I just want to, it's just a shout out to the hierarchy of both police and fire, because everything flows down, right, from the top. And their personnel are just so classy, and it was a blast. And another shout out to Chris Fogarty, who showed up on her day off just to take pictures and be there. And that's a part of Millis I don't think a lot of people see. You see them in their uniforms, but you don't see this kind of stuff. It benefited the Special Olympics. They raised, I believe, over $10,000. And here's a fun fact. The CEO and president of the Special Olympics happens to be a Millis person. Her name is Mary Beth McMahon, born Mary Beth Hunt. I know her sister because she's married to my brother's very close friend. She grew up in Millis, and she currently lives in Millis. So a shout out to Mary Beth for making it so incredible. Anywho, that's that piece.
But Ellen, did you plunge?
I did plunge.
That's our burning question.
I did plunge. It was cold. They don't call it the polar plunge for nothing. I had a wetsuit on. I could have been nothing. It was cold, but it was still fun. So that's that piece. I also want to talk about, I know that Craig has put in a placeholder for every one of our meetings for information about the school. That's the big thing coming up. This is another kind of a fact that I'm not sure everybody's aware of. The override for the school, or debt exclusion, whatever we call it, is not May's town meeting. A lot of people think it's this May. I was at the senior center this morning, and a lot of people thought, well, what are we voting on in May? And I said, well, the good news is it's not May, it's November, because we don't have half the information that you're going to need to make an informed vote. We don't even know how much the state is giving us.
We have a range, yeah.
Right, so there's going to be so many more forums and informational sessions coming out all summer into the fall that you will be more than prepared to cast your vote in November.
By September, we should know the final cost and the final state contribution within a few points most. So it'll be in plenty of time to get the word out before November, but not now.
Not now. So don't panic yet. Wait until October to panic. We'll all be panicking with you. I posted a couple of articles about schools on my social media, and I just want to talk about them very briefly. So they're both in the Boston Globe. There's such good information in the Globe, by the way. One of them talked about how the new, bless you, one of them talked about how the new schools that are coming up for votes in the various towns around us, closing in on $500 million. Very, very interesting article. every one of them, Waltham, Lowell, Revere, Lexington, Brockton, Boston, all of them, new school construction, except for the Boston one, which they think is gonna come in at about $700 million. It's gonna be a renovation for a vocational school. And the other ones, Brockton, they're projecting $1 billion. It's currently 700 million, but they're sure it's gonna cross the $1 billion threshold. Lexington, 662 million, Revere, 493 million, Waltham, 374 million, and Lowell, $381 million. So I think that's interesting, and the article goes on to say that these costs are not specific to Massachusetts, they're nationwide. The second article talked about the downward spiral of money coming to school districts, and basically talked about there's over 200 districts, Millis being one of them, that get the lowest levels of increases allowed under state law. Apparently, there are 5 districts that get most of the money. I'm not going to say which 5, it doesn't matter. What matters is Millis is one of the 200 and some that gets the very lowest level, because we are now considered a wealthy town, which is what it is. A lot of the towns are what they call bedroom communities, right? That just means that we have a very, very small commercial tax base. We're not alone. The thing that I like about these articles is it shows us that we're not alone. That always makes me feel better. Even if I'm sinking with the Titanic and they're playing music, I feel better for whatever reason. It's not like we're doing something wrong and everybody's doing something right and we're getting left behind. No, a lot of us are getting left behind, and we're doing the best we can. So I like that. The other part that was interesting in the article, that it said that the funding is even worse for regional schools, because each town's ability to pay their share varies, which complicates the values for state aid and makes it harder to get votes necessary for the real estate tax hikes. So I thought that was interesting. They blame the rising costs on 3 variables: health insurance, rate hikes, that's number 1, busing increased costs, and tuition for out-of-district SPED programs, all of which are true. But then interestingly, a few days after this article, another article came out in the Globe that said that health insurance expenses soared 8.6% to $78.1 billion in 2023, which was more than double the 3.6% annual growth benchmark set by the state. So what they say rings true. These are the expenses, and this is why we are where we are. So those are my updates on that. Sound good?
Sounds good. Then when the consultants were, same group that did the Clyde Brown are doing the high school design, they said the Clyde Brown cost us $52 million when we did it. They said to build that exact same school now is well over $100 million. And that's 5 years later. So just the cost of construction inflation, I mean, that's doubled in cost in the last 5 years. So aren't you glad we did it when we did?
Yes. And then the last piece I wanted to bring up, which is another article, because these things come out and I think that we should address them because I think people are concerned. An article just came out about the MSBA, right? About the auditor came out and said that they should have called it an unfunded mandate. It wasn't funded,
You're
right?
talking about MBTA 3A.
I mean MBTA, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
MBTA. And I just want everybody to know that we are on top of this, and if any money is due, we will get it. But I want, Mike, you understand this better than me, so explain what happened when the auditor came out and kind of put a monkey wrench into what Healy's trying to do.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to back up a little bit, under state law, which was put into place as part of Proposition 2.5, The state is not allowed to enact new laws that are considered unfunded mandates for local cities and towns without providing the funding for those additional requirements. So basically, the state auditor's office is charged with reviewing any state laws that local communities file to be looked at as possible unfunded mandates. And when the SJC did their ruling a few months ago and said this is a mandate, this is not a do it if you want, if you don't, you'll just lose a couple, grants. This has been ruled a mandate by the state. So the auditor said, okay, now we have that confirmation from the SJC. She did some research and found that yes, it is an unfunded mandate because there is work involved with actually getting to the point of getting the zoning in place to move to meet those requirements. So the town of Millis, like, the majority of communities did get a grant to do that work with the MAPC. Mr. Weiss, our planner, worked with them and then worked with the planning board and other boards and groups in town to move forward with this. So, and the town just received its verification from the Attorney General today that they've approved our bylaw. And so the town of Millis is all set. It's not an issue with the town, but for those communities that have chosen to fight against the law, they can certainly go after the state as part of this process for, some funds to cover their cost to transfer. The auditor said this should not have been a grant program, it should have been an automatic, the state is going to pay for this. So it's not a huge hangup for the state, but it did,
Right.
they're gonna have to address a few things on this.
So even if we got a grant, which we had to apply for, and they now say, well, now we have to actually give them money, do we still get the money? Can we double dip?
I'm gonna say probably not.
I would say probably not. Nothing is certain, but I wouldn't be anticipating any
Yeah.
additional funds from the state coming in connection with this.
And my fear would be, because I'm always in fear when the state's going to give me something, that they're going to give us 70,000 for the grant process, and we actually got 100, I don't know what the grant was,
Right,
but.
they'll take away.
And we might owe them $30,000. So I want to stay out of it. I want to stay off their radar screen. But the reality is, so just to understand, the MBTA zoning is not the unfunded mandate, because that just brings in homes that generate tax revenue. It's the planning for it that was the unfunded mandate.
Right.
And as you said, we had a grant, so it cost this town nothing. So nothing was unfunded rather.
Right.
And I'm just afraid if the state says that they're going to pay for it, they're going to pay 70%. We're going to owe them money when we return the grant.
Right. Good luck getting that money back.
We're not going to sign anything. That's the one I won't approve.
Okay, so that's good. Now, we have one last sort of piece of this puzzle. We should talk about this now because we're in the school thing, right, Mike?
Sure.
So we're going to talk about something that we've all, so, do you want to do it, Mike? Do you want me to?
Why don't you start, and I'd be happy to,
Okay, so
I'd be
there's this
happy to
group.
jump in any
There's
point
a
you
group
want.
out there called
Project 211.
Project 211 plus 21? Some weird, whoever came up with that name should be shot, honestly. Project 211 plus 21, I have no idea what it means. But
I
what
think, I have a speculation. There were 211 towns that were at the bottom. They weren't getting any increases in state aid. And now there's 21 more that have hit that level. So that's my theory.
Oh, look at you.
That's my theory. I don't know if it's true or not, but that really makes sense.
Not
Because
for
they say there's
nothing.
132 towns.
Not for nothing, but I had to beg him to watch the video, and now he's taking full credit. I'm kidding. Is that what it is, really?
Well, they say there's 132 towns that are at the
Anyway,
foundation level, or
it's
whatever you
this
call it.
group
Yeah.
that's been working for 2 or 3 years to try to get the state to change its formula so that it doesn't leave 211 plus 21 towns
Yeah.
behind when it funds 5 districts. So it's a presentation that they put on. It takes about a half an hour to watch. We're going to post it on our webpage. They've worked for 3 years to put together, so they want to try to get some money from the millionaire's tax. So I don't know if you all know this, but the millionaire's tax is supposed to fund two things and two things only. One is transportation and one is education. They want some money from that millionaire's tax, and they have a whole spreadsheet figured out exactly how much for this, and this. The bottom line is, there's a legislative meeting a week from today in Amherst at 11 o'clock in the morning that I'm going to attend. Karen, we're going to get a contingency going. The school's going to get a contingency going. We're going to try to get as many people in town to go. We're also, it's legislative, it's who's in front of? Ways and Means?
Ways and Means.
They're the
Yes.
people that are putting this on from the 211.
It's the state's finance committee, basically.
Okay,
Yeah.
they want a big showing. They just want it to be standing room only. They want to show a show of force. So they've asked for a letter writing campaign, and they're talking more about, and not just a form letter where we just create one letter and you all pull it off the internet and then you just sign your name. They want personal stories. How is it affecting you, your kid, if you're a teacher, your district, everything. And we want to help, because why not? I don't know if it'll work, but it won't hurt.
When is this field trip?
The field trip is Monday, a week from today, to Amherst for 11 o'clock in the morning. We'll have everything posted, right?
Yep.
We don't have Karen, so
We'll figure it out.
we'll figure it out. We'll have everything posted, a sample letter, addresses, email addresses. I don't know if you're supposed to want snail mail or email, both. And then as many people that can go, to go.
Are we taking a bus?
Well,
We're looking into.
we're looking into that. We'll post everything. We'll let everybody know. I don't know what the school, how many people they're gonna get. But if you get a chance to listen to the presentation, it's a half an hour. It's very good. Typically, I don't pay much attention, but it's very good. They're very passionate. It's a cry for help.
Help in what way?
Helping, having them change the funding formula so
Yeah.
that we don't get the least amount of funding. Us and 211 plus 21 other districts.
232 other districts. Yeah, basically the way, since I
Go
just
ahead.
watched it after she yelled at me in the car to watch it.
Good head.
There were three parts that really hit me. The first one is a one-time infusion of $100 million into the MSBA funding, which would benefit us because it could allow for recomputation of the rates for funding a school that we have in the pipeline. So that might help us with a higher percentage, because schools, as Ellen started with, have gotten more expensive. Second item, and there were like 6 or 7 key points, but the second one that really hit, they're looking for $290,000, just nothing, chump change for the state, a rounding error for the state, to fund a re-look at the formula
right.
that was written in 1999 and hasn't been looked at, touched, or modified since 1999. So that's the formula that you put billions of dollars into. It shifts down. 5 towns get an increase, and 232 towns get $44 more than they got the year before, no matter how much you put in. I mean, you could dump billions and billions and billions in. The way the formula works, it channels it to underperforming, lower income, non-wealthy communities, and the other communities get very, very, very little. So they want to relook at that formula, because when it was written, there weren't that many communities that were getting shafted, the short end of the stick.
Yeah,
And,
the third piece.
yeah. And the third piece is, they're looking at the SPED circuit breaker. Right now, the state's covering 75% of the circuit, the eligible cost after we pay our share. There's money that's left over the state should be covering. They cover 75% of it. They're trying to move that to a 90% coverage, which would be several hundreds of thousands of dollars coming back to the town. So there are some very good points that they're trying to work on. I'm most excited, but probably going to be horribly disappointed in the funding formula rework, because that could give us sustainable long-term change to the way the funding goes out in the state. We're in what we call a hold harmless community, I think that's the right term. That means we can't drop below what we had last year, I guess, or?
Right, or
Yeah.
a minimum, the aid from
The
year
minimum aid.
before.
And that's why that formula has to be worked out with, because there's 232 out of the three, I don't know how many districts there are, but there's 351
Yeah,
towns.
no, there aren't that many,
Yeah.
there's 250 something.
Yes, there's 250-something districts, 232 of them are getting the minimal available
Yes.
funds.
Yes.
Yeah.
I should know better, being on a committee, that I should have come up and asked Joyce Boyardi, 206 Orchard Street. What exactly is this and when is it? I know you said Monday, but what is it being called and where is it?
Well, what it is, it's just this group. It reminds me a little
Well,
bit.
this is
Well, this
actually the
is
state.
this is this is
Oh,
a
the-
legislative hearing
State
being
Ways and
held,
Means.
I believe, at UMass Amherst.
Yeah.
And it's being held by the Ways and Means, the Joint Ways and Means Committee of the state legislature.
Yeah,
So they will be holding this hearing at 11 o'clock next Monday. There's no set end date, and the public is welcome to attend. It's an open public hearing. I think you have to sign up in advance to be able to speak, but people are welcome to come and show their
Right.
support, and, you know.
I think they're just looking for, listen, this is something we can do. This is something we can do. This reminds me of when we helped out with the mess that was happening with Millis Housing. I don't know if you remember, with the CHAMPS program, and it was a mess, and people in Leominster got first choice at Millis, when Millis people couldn't get first choice in Millis. And we wrote letters, and there was a big article in the Globe following that a little bit, and then they discontinued that practice, and now Millis people get to the top of the list. It's a letter writing campaign, whether it will help or, it can't hurt. They're looking for numbers. They're looking for numbers, letters, numbers of people to show up, to show that we're in trouble. This isn't just a Monday, we have nothing to do. I thought we'd take a nice drive to Amherst. They
Is
want
there
to
a-
show a force.
Is there a letter that can be written up?
Yeah.
So that then in turn, people can actually just sign their name,
Well,
their
no,
precinct?
they don't encourage that. They encourage personal stories. They say that a form letter, they're just gonna look nice. We all know how that works. They wanna know how it's impacted you. They want your kids to write a letter. How has it impacted them? Teachers, us as administrators.
But they want this by Monday?
No, this.
They don't have,
Oh.
no.
They don't have to, but
Yes.
it would be nice if it
It'd
was.
be nice,
Yeah.
but I don't think they're not gonna take it 2 days after the.
I don't think they're taking a vote on it either on Monday.
No.
They
Yeah.
want to come armed, right? So they want our representatives to come armed with our letters. Like, look at this pile of letters I have received. And they want a show of force and people out there so that the committee that's meeting goes, hey, why are all these people here? What are they here for? What's going on? And it brings just more attention to the issue. So that's what they're looking to accomplish with this.
And how long have we known about this?
Oh, I don't know, 2 weeks?
Yeah,
Maybe?
1 to 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah.
Well, maybe after hours, someone can sit down with me.
Well, we're
and-
just gonna we're gonna.
Well,
Let
also
me
put
know
it
what
on
the
website.
letter-
Website. There'll be things on the website.
There'll be
within
things
Yeah,
on
but
the-
ideas
next day or
about the
two.
letter.
Yep.
Right.
Because maybe we
Right.
can get the seniors and, we're all involved with enough people in the town
Yeah.
that maybe we can,
I mean, from a senior perspective, it could be, my second grader grandchild is now not going to learn any digital literacy because of cuts that we were forced to make. And
Right.
last year, we cut this many people, and we're in danger of cutting more people,
Yeah.
and, you know,
That
how this is,
kind.
exactly,
the
those
impact
kinds of
it's made on the
stories.
town.
Yes.
Yeah,
yeah.
they can write it in crayon,
Yeah, and,
because they took our pencils away, because we don't have enough money for pencils.
yeah, and this is, yeah,
Is that good?
let's leave that out. And this is, nice idea.
No, we
Ellen.
now
I-
have to use our own blood.
I admire your creativity, but I'm not sure that that's going to help. No, I think that that really this is a concrete example of how we can do something that may impact the cost of the building, because everybody's got these great ideas how we can cut costs, but this is a possibility to get more money into the MSBA fund to fund it. And secondly, to redo that formula, which, people are saying we shouldn't have done the override, we should have looked for solutions. this is the solution. Get the state out there to give us more funds and redo the formula. So if you're not willing to write a letter on it and you still want to say we're not doing anything,
Yeah.
I'm done. You know, so people who really think more should be done to fund the schools other than raise taxes, write a letter. It's going to actually make a difference. And we'll have the information out on our website tomorrow, I hope.
Yes,
Yep.
tomorrow.
And I'll
The
post,
impact it makes on the senior population.
Yeah.
The impact it's
Yes.
making on
Yeah.
the children.
Yes.
Yeah,
The
all of
impact
it.
it's making on the parents of the children.
Yep. So we'll get that information up in multiple places after we get it figured out. And
Yes.
just some points you can put in a letter. And it doesn't have to be terribly long, it just has to be different. I received on one issue that we were dealing with like a year ago, I received about 120 emails that were all the exact same email. I'm not an elected, I mean, I'm elected, but I'm not a professional politician. I stopped reading after I read the first two sentences of each, and I said, I'll move to the next, I'll move to the next, I'll move to the next. The one who was written by a high school kid who actually talked about the impact, I read all of it, and I took notes on it. It was a great letter, I responded to it, but the other ones that were just cut and paste form letters,
Yeah,
they
we
lose
shouldn't-
impact.
Yeah, we shouldn't give them a reason to dismiss us.
Yeah,
It's not that hard
yeah,
to write a few sentences and plead our case.
yeah.
Be on the website where to mail it to and all that kind of stuff.
Yep,
Yes.
we're gonna
Yeah.
have everything. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yes, that's good. All right, so now we're gonna get to, I have a couple other very small things. Live streaming update. So we are now live streaming select board meetings. We are live streaming finance committee meetings, Mr. Law. And next on the agenda is gonna be planning board meetings. So that's exciting. How exciting is that? It's beyond.
Tell us, Ellen.
It's just so
Moderately
exciting. Another announcement, the RFI for the train station went out this week. That means we'll be getting bids in to actually do the work, right?
That is
Mike?
correct. That is correct. They are-
Exciting. These are exciting days, people. Is that it for all my news? Can't be any more, can there?
It's well past what was on the agenda, so.
Okay, so now we're gonna get to what you're all here for, which is our municipal moment, which is on real estate taxes, which I know is beyond, hold your breath, people. So, I'm just gonna have a little anecdote to start this, because I wanna tell you what I thought, how they worked, which is hilarious. And if I think it, I'm sure one other person has thought this. I think people think this. I thought that if you live in a town and your schools are great and everything's going great and your real estate taxes go up every year and people come in and now they're, instead of paying $800,000, now they're paying $1 million and $1.5 million and $2 million and everything's rising, your real estate taxes go up. But then you have an override and it fails. So now you're cutting 22 teachers, or you're cutting this, you're cutting that. So now, people are not gonna come to Millis, they're gonna go to Medfield, they're gonna go to Medway, because they're still up there. And so when that happens, if people are not bidding up your houses anymore, your real estate taxes are going to fall. That does not happen. Your real estate taxes never fall. You can be in a town where your house is worth 500, or your house is worth $1 million. And funnily enough, your real estate taxes are still going to go up. I'm not going to explain why. Jody's going to explain why. But I just wanted to tell you that I think that is something that people think. Go ahead, Jody.
That's an awesome intro.
Yeah.
Nice segue.
I like to start with dumbing everything down, because it can only rise now with you.
Great. So I will start us off. Thanks for coming, everyone, here in the room and online. When the town administrator and the chair of the select board asked our team, the finance team, to do the municipal moment on real estate taxes, I said, okay, we can do that. How long do we have? So
See, I told you, now you have less than a minute.
I do, so that's fantastic.
I
We'll
told-
wrap this up
she
real
was
quick.
so messed up that I gave her a half an hour. I said, I'm gonna talk through the whole half an hour. You're gonna have like 35 seconds.
what do they say? The only two guarantees in life, death and taxes. It's true.
There
It
you
is
go,
true.
right?
Okay.
We don't want to talk about death today, though.
So I figured that we could do, I was just gonna introduce myself. For those of you that I have not met yet, my name is Jody Kersey. I serve as your finance director. Sitting alongside of me today is Terry Gonzalez. Sorry, we practiced that. She is our principal assessor. She's one of the members of the financial team, and a key person when it comes to real estate tax discussions. So between the two of us, we're gonna run through just a few things, to give some high-level overview of sort of what the climate is in the market, some understanding, a better understanding of how taxes are calculated, demystify some of the things that our chairperson had brought up. So just to get started, like I said, Terry has been with the town of Millis actually as an assessor since 2020. But prior to that, I won't say the number of years, but for a very long time, she's been an accredited assessor. And that's a really big accomplishment for anyone in this capacity. It speaks to her credentials and her ability to do this job and do it well. So the town is super lucky to have her. And as we work alongside of each other during the tax season, she continues to keep us informed of town valuations, cyclical inspections that happen periodically, what our building and construction outlook looks like. So she's got a pulse on that for the entire town. These numbers are then sort of brought to me. We look at them together alongside of some other data, and we're able to complete some of the state's formulas in order to calculate tax rates, and things like that. So without getting into the nitty-gritty of that, I'll just say the Department of Revenue is our governing agency that dictates a lot of what the legal requirements are for a tax levy, if you will. You'll hear some terms today that you may not completely understand, but I'm going to give you some resources at the end. The levy is essentially what we're able to raise through taxation of anything real estate or anything personal property. So when the state says, this is how much the town of Millis can raise through taxation, we get that number. There's a formula involved, and essentially, we're able to extract a tax rate based on the town's valuation and the total property value within the community. That being said, there, again, are some other things behind the scenes that are used to calculate. But what does it all come down to is what are my taxes and why do they keep going up? Again, there's a formula. It's a very simple formula of a couple of components that come together. You look at the levy from the previous year, so how much did we collect in taxes from the previous year? Did we authorize any additional spending over the 2.5 limit that the state puts on us? Did we have any debt exclusions that, again, allow us to go outside of that cap? What was our new growth? So we can roll in new growth to what that new levy amount is, and then you have your starting number for the next year. So that's essentially the simplistic formula. But again, there's a lot that goes into getting to that, but that becomes one of our 3 revenue components. We're not gonna touch on the others today. Maybe we'll do a revenue presentation down the road. But within the levy, a couple of things to understand about Millis. Millis is heavily reliant upon the residential taxes, residential real estate taxes to support our levy. There are communities that have robust commercial businesses, industrial areas of town that bring in other tax revenue to help defray some of the burden on the residents. Millis, of that, the tax levy makes up about 76% of the overall taxes, 76% of the overall revenue that comes into the town of Millis. The rest is made up with state aid, some other contributing factors, but again, the big number to remember is 76% or so of all of our revenue is funded through taxation. Within that 76%, we have about 92% that is residential. The only other component to that, about 8%, is, or was it 94 and 6? I think it's 94 and 6.
It varies, right now it's
It
about
varies.
8.5% is commercial, industrial, and personal property.
Right.
Everything else is
Right.
residential.
So you're looking at over 90% essentially is completely resting on the shoulders of tax-paying citizens on the residential and personal property side. So again, when you have a community that relies heavily upon the residents, it can be burdensome, right? So there are other answers to some of that and helping defray that cost through economic development, smart for the community. But as it currently stands, that's where Millis is. And Madam Chair, you pointed out earlier that we're not alone in other areas, right? This is no different. Millis is not a community that is any other that has a heavy burden, on the residential side of things. Couple of things just to throw out there, and you can, again, I'm gonna refer to the references down the road, but the average family tax bill for FY '25 for Millis is $9,925. Within our Norfolk County community, we're below the average. The average family tax bill, on average for the Norfolk County, which is our neighbors, Dover, Franklin, Holliston, Medway, Medfield, Norfolk, and Sherburne, the average is $12,542. Okay, so out of those 8 communities, we are third from the bottom. Okay, so we're not even middle of the pack, we're lower than that, but those are our neighbors. Okay, so just kind of understanding that. The other thing that I want to point out is that for the last about 10 years, we have experienced a tremendous amount of growth. We've experienced, starting back in 2016, for about the last 9-10 years, anywhere from 7.5% to 33.5% last year. Okay, we have a cyclical, it's not cyclical, it's just the equalized valuation that happens when the community in all of its real estate and all of its, the full and fair cash value of all property in the town of Millis is equalized and valued. That's the number that I'm talking about. And so we rose last year alone, actually the last time it was done was 2022, it happens every 2 years. In 2024, we rose 33.48% in value. So we talk about the value of the town going from 1.67 billion to 2.23 billion.
When you say the value of the town, you mean the value of, the
All
assessed
the
value of all
property.
the property?
Correct,
Not personal, all real,
correct.
real property.
Yep. So these are some metrics that are readily available, but I think the reason I bring them up is because, again, we're not alone, right? This is something that's unique to Millis in that experiencing large, bursts of growth, right, within certain communities, kind of, that happens for communities at different times. But that's just something to point out for the town of Millis. So this goes back to how are my taxes calculated? Why do my taxes never go down? Why do they always go up? It has a direct correlation to the valuation of property. So I'm going to turn it over to Terry for just a couple of minutes to talk about the real estate tax cycle, real estate.
But you said, one thing you
Yep.
did say, so you say we're 9,900, a typical house, an average house is 9,900, we're third from the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
But then you see all over the place, people get stuck on the tax rate.
Okay, yep,
You-
The-
there's
the
The tax
tax-
rate and the assessment.
Sure.
How they work. They
Yep.
work together
Yep.
to hit, you should spend a second on that.
sure.
Terry might.
Oh, is it Terry's job to do that?
Yeah, we'll have Terry speak to
I
that.
figured they worked this out.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep, we'll have Terry speak to
Okay,
that
great.
when we talk about that. So I'll hand it over to Terry.
Okay, I know the first thing that people are asking about is the billing cycle. In Millis, we pay quarterly. The bills are only sent out twice a year. You receive your preliminary bill in July. It's due August 1st and November 1st. Those are your preliminary bills. Those are based on the previous year's value, previous year's tax rate. Then in the end of December, you receive your actual bill, which is due February 1st and May 1st. That is the actual bill for the current fiscal year. The important part to remember in Millis is we do only mail them twice a year, but you pay them 4 times a year. That's really important for people moving into town that aren't used to that particular way of receiving their bills. As far as the real estate tax calculations go, for individual tax bills, you take your value divided by 1,000 times the tax rate, and that will tell you what your taxes are. The average we're using, that Jody's been speaking of, is for single family. It's not it's just for the single family homes, not for condos, not for 2 families, not for 3 families, not for apartment buildings, single family. That is
Yeah.
what is used for your averages. The tax rate is what we need to pay our bills. That isn't funded through other sources of revenue. That's where the rate comes from.
Okay. And our current rate, what is our current rate?
$16.40 per thousand.
So you say the tax rate, but it all has to fund the levy,
The levy, yes.
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So if your levy's 45 million, whatever it is, what is it?
Currently, our levy after our revenue sources is 35 million.
35 million.
Yeah. I guess, here's a simple question. You said the valuation's about $2 billion for the town, 2.3 billion, 2.2 billion. I think you mentioned that. If that value, if my house and everybody else's house doubles in values and the valuation would go up to, call it $4 billion, that $16.40 tax rate, in a real simple way, would drop to like $8.20.
It would.
Simplified.
It's simplified, but your
yeah.
value would have gone from 500,000
Yes.
to 900,000.
Exactly. And we would still collect 2.5% more than we did the prior year, excluding new growth.
Yes.
That's why that's why the focus on the tax rate
Right.
is almost, I don't want to say irrelevant, because it's totally relevant,
Right.
but it's not the driver. It's the
Right.
outcome of the other components that
Right.
are the drivers. The assessed value of the town, the assessed value of property.
Right.
That gives you that rate. So
Yeah.
it's not the major component to look at, it's just the result of the rest.
And unfortunately, that's the major component people fixate on.
Right.
And it's not a good indicator. And people argue it, but that $9,900 average single-family tax bill versus $12,500 is the cost of living. But the typical home in Millis, I'd be paying $9,900. The typical home in Dover, which might not be typical, but I'd be paying $12,500. 18.5 is theirs.
Yep.
So any place that I could move to, aside from 2 other towns, I
Correct.
would be paying
Yes.
more in taxes than I'm
Yes.
paying in Millis.
Yes.
Yeah.
On the same valued home.
No, on the average valued home
Right.
in that
In
town,
that
and that's the key point, Joyce. Because my house, if you could pick up my house and drive it to Dover and put it on a 1/4 acre lot in Dover, if such a thing existed. I know, but let's pretend it does. My house would not be worth the appraised value in Millis. It would shoot through the roof because I'm located in Dover. So for me to sell my house and buy a house for the equivalent amount of money in Dover is gonna put me in the, I don't think it exists, let's just be honest. Yeah. But, so that's the trick. It's not the same value house, it's the median value for the town. And as towns get higher and higher in value,
Right.
it's harder and harder to find that median value house.
Yes,
Yeah.
and keep in mind, everyone in this room drives the market,
Yeah.
right? So it's what someone is willing to pay for said home in said
Yep.
town, right? So we dictate, all of us dictate the market. And
Yep.
so that's
Willing
where,
buyer, willing seller sets
Right.
the values. That is what sets values.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I first started this, we were, I think, under $1 billion 30 years ago on assessed, the valuation of the town. To be over $2 billion now is interesting, and to have it grow as much as it has in the last 2 years is shocking, yeah.
It's not shocking. I was saying today, it's
Yeah.
not shocking.
I don't mean it's a bad thing, I'm
No,
just surprised how.
but I'm
yeah.
just saying, for years, I watched this happen 20 years ago, in the beginning of 2000, when Medfield exploded. And then it jumped over Millis, and Medway exploded. It was the craziest thing. And we're
Yeah.
looking at each other, and we were just beginning the subdivision at my farm. And it was like, what is happening? Nobody could understand it, but it was real. It was real. We hadn't broken 1 million in Millis. And Medway, which is this much further from Boston, that's how you typically calculate value. How close are you to Boston? But so it was bound to happen, and it did, for good or for bad, whatever, it's going to happen. But it just sort of exploded, and now we're wealthy.
Yeah. A wealthy community.
Do you see that same explosion happening here? Or it's currently happening?
It's currently happening.
It's been happening for the
What did it
last,
go up last year, Jody?
33.5%.
33.5%. That's an explosion.
I have a question.
You got
you got to come up to the
You gotta
front,
come
yeah. But we'll be glad to, between the 5 of us, 6 of us, we might be able to make heads or tails of it.
Hi, good evening. Name's Brian D'Souza, I live in Oakview. So, I understand the explanation of value and taxes, but my question is, what triggers a tax increase? I mean, it's all well and good to have a house that values, and I know the town has a levy. What triggers a tax increase for the citizen of Millis? Is it the levy, or is it the value of the house based on the market?
A tax increase?
Yeah.
Why did
I
his
mean,
taxes go up?
Why do our taxes go up?
It's both, and it's also the
Right,
the
and
cost
then-
of running the town.
Then part B is, why base it on value? Isn't that kind of greedy? Because the value of a property goes up, you have the permission to tax a citizen higher taxes, but you don't really need the money, it should be based on what the
Well,
levy is, right?
can I try for a second
Yeah.
here? Because taxes can only go up, we can only collect, putting aside new growth.
Amen to that.
Putting aside new growth, we
Yep.
can only collect 2.5% more.
Year to year.
Year to year.
Okay.
And I promise you,
Yeah.
is there anybody in the room whose expenses are only growing 2.5% a year with? So no matter what, we can only pay more, buy gas for the police cars at 2.5% more than the prior year. So when you
So
say,
is
do we
that-
really need it?
Is that meeting the levy, the 2.5%?
2.5% is coming nowhere close to
So
meeting
it's
the
falling
net.
short?
Far short.
Okay.
We need to grow at least 4% to stay even.
Closer to
But
60.
we get money from new growth. That's why I said excluding new growth.
Yep.
So as new growth starts falling off, we will run into financial troubles again. And we were there 10 years ago before this started growing. We were approaching the point, if we hadn't had the new growth, we were going to have to start significant layoffs 10 years ago. New growth came in, we didn't have to do that. We'll see how things continue. We are growing. But without an override, the total the town can collect can only go up 2.5%. And if everybody's house remained appraised exactly the same as it was the prior year, your taxes would go up 2.5%. Fortunately or unfortunately, when they built the Clyde Brown School, I'm in walking distance to the Clyde Brown, mine went up more than 2.5%. Yeah, they reassessed my neighborhood. I don't know if it's related. It felt like it, but it may not be. But I went up more than 2.5.
You gotta move
But I
that house to
promise you,
Dover.
if your taxes go up more than 2.5%,
Yeah.
somebody who's being very quiet sitting in the back had their taxes fall. Maybe not in this room. But for everybody who had their taxes go up
Yeah.
more than 2.5%, somebody's grew less than 2.5% or fell. Because we can only collect 2.5% more.
Total.
Total, without an override.
Does that sound true?
Yes, so the prior year levy, think about it from, say, one column to the next. If the prior year levy, in round numbers, 100 million, right?
Yep.
Even numbers. If we had 100 million that we were allowed to raise through taxation in the previous year, we would take that 100 million, we would add 2.5% to it.
Yep.
So we'd add $250,000, okay? So we'd have 100,250,000, right? plus we would say, we project that we're gonna have another $500,000 in new growth, right? So then we would add that number to it. So now we're up to 100,750,000, right? Then we say, okay, there's no overrides, we're not going above the 2.5, we're gonna stay here. There's no debt that we're gonna borrow this year, so we don't have to add that to the equation.
Yep.
So now our new number that we're gonna go with for the current year would be 100,750,000, okay? The value of your home, how that's relevant, is that is how we were able to distribute the fair share with a consistent formula. We say we need to raise 100,750,000, okay, your house is worth $1 million, okay, this is how much you owe. Your house is worth 500, this is how much you owe. So it's the same formula, and that's where your home's valuation comes into play. But it's the same equal formula across the board, it's just that everyone's property and homes values differ, and that's how to do it. So if we think about starting with, we all have to help pay for this much, and here's how we're gonna give everybody their fair share.
Okay,
That's how you kinda have to look at it.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Go ahead, Joyce.
You've
Come on
mentioned
up.
dancing earlier.
You mentioned that we're a bedroom town.
Yes.
Wellesley was a bedroom town. It no longer is because there's a lot of business in there. We have industrial area that is not being utilized. Do you foresee that,
No.
and why not?
Because well, we're a bedroom community because we have, I don't know, 1.5 miles of commercial and industrial on 109. You could zone the entire town commercial and industrial. It doesn't mean anybody's going to survive anywhere but on 109, because we see that nothing is surviving off of 109. Rossi's has changed 6 times. It's not going to survive. You see in Medway and Medfield, 109. That's all we have. Wellesley, whether it was at one time, maybe with horse and carriage, but Wellesley has 16, 27. They have the whole Roach thing, and they have, when I think of commercial towns that have a commercial base that maybe deserve a split rate, I think of whole parks. I think of it, Westwood's,
University.
University Ave.
Yeah.
I think of Route 9, where they have swaths. We have literally, I don't even think it's 2 miles on 109. And
Maybe
in-
2 miles on 109, but how far back does that, how much acreage is that? That if it were,
It doesn't go anywhere. It goes as far as you can see. It backs up to another road
Yeah.
that's residential.
And I think the question is also then on that, a split tax rate, because that's what everybody wants. They
Right.
want to charge, instead of charging us $16.40, they want to charge those guys over there $32.80.
Right, a business.
And have ours, well,
Go down.
probably fall to 15-something, just quite
Right.
honestly. And you can't even go that high. I mean, there's a limit that you can go to.
Right.
So we'll never get to the
No.
point where we can
So
split a tax rate that would
there's a
help
rule
us.
of thumb, I
Yeah.
read on some Facebook post that somebody said, well, is it a law? I mean, why can't we have a split? That's a law. It's a law. It's not a law. It's just good fiscal,
Right.
financial sense. We have 4% commercial in this town, 4%. The other 4%'s sales receipts.
but I see that
And there's
there's
not-
empty land, I mean, on 109. Is there any way of doing any kinds of incentives? I understand we're not an
Well-
A town,
Well, Joyce, if we do incentives, that lowers the amount we collect in taxes too.
but you're
We could
still
put buildings
gaining,
that-
but you're still gaining taxes. Sometimes you have to do, less is sometimes more.
No, there's,
If we subsidize the taxes of those businesses and say we're charging you a $10 tax rate to come into town, we just increase the
What's the-
burden on everybody else in town. Yeah,
I'm, rather than a 32%.
there is, Joyce.
yeah.
It's been
Trust me,
visited.
I know
This, yeah,
every square inch of
and I
this
did the
town.
math once, but I'm not sure,
It's
I'm not
not-
sure I did it right.
We,
Thank you.
So Jim McKay, I'm also a member of the planning board, and this has been studied over and over
Thank
and
you,
over and over
Thank you,
again. And I can tell you that the biggest thing that ever came out of one of the studies was Millis is like a donut. and we're the hole in the donut. And for each side to get to 95 and to 495, you're not gonna get any industry because the trucking costs, just to get the supplies in and out of here is way too far away from 95 and 495. And it's just, that, like you just said, everything in back of the properties, Joyce, that it was just talked about, it's all wetlands. So you're only gonna get that one little building, and it's not gonna be big enough for a factory to build on it. The last industrial thing that came to us before the marijuana plant was built at the old Hodgman building there.
611, yeah.
It is, was a transfer station. That was the only thing because of the rail line. And that's all that ever came to us, and we actually pushed that off for that not to be built there. So,
Yeah,
It
I want
has
to be
been
clear what
started.
Jim's saying, transfer station, if I'm correct, it was
It was
you bring your garbage to us, we
Yes.
dump it in the parking lot, we take backhoes and
And
move
with
it
the
around.
trains,
I don't want
move
that.
it.
Yeah, So, so that's not an attractive business. So thank you, Jim, on the planning board.
The flip side, I know you think we want commercial. The flip side is, we're a bedroom community. People come here for that. They come here because they don't want Milford, and they don't want Route 109 and a Kmart and an empty. This is it's a neighborhood, bedroom, community, which is like another 150 towns that people flock to. So that's your trade-off.
Yeah, our Economic Development Committee, one person keeps saying that Millis is equally convenient to everywhere. I have a different spin on that. I think we're equally inconvenient to everywhere, but you're right. You know, we're Worcester, Boston, Providence, we're just as close to all of them.
So, I was
go.
gonna say, I don't know if there's any questions on anything that we talked about so far, but probably just to close it out, I just wanted to share, that there's some couple areas that I would highly recommend as far as resources go for anyone that wants to learn more. The Division of Local Services is a subdivision, if you will, of the Department of Revenue. You can find it through Googling Division of Local Services, and you will come up with a state website. There's a municipal finance resource center, of which they have all kinds of tools and great YouTube videos that are anywhere from a minute to 2 minutes. They're really quick, easy listens with visuals to talk about all the terms that you hear and you don't know what they quite mean. But they're a great tutorial for anybody that wants to dig a little bit deeper and kind of understand the full context of the tax planning process. Additionally, our principal assessor and team have also furnished frequently asked questions. So a lot of the things that come up, again, how are my taxes calculated? Why did this happen? Why don't I see a land evaluation? Like anything that you can think of. And we're always open to new suggestions. So if that list gets stale and there's new questions, definitely let the assessing team know. And we can update that list, but that's found right on our Millis website, millisma.gov, and look under the assessing department. But again, I appreciate your time.
Did we talk at all about how individual properties are valued? Or is that just part of the equation?
You mean the actual mechanics too?
Yeah.
Like how
Yeah.
come my single-family home with 4 bedrooms and 2
Yes.
baths? And you can maybe talk high
I
level
know we
about.
sub that out, right?
I do the sales inspections, I do the permanent inspections. Last year, we did have a company come in to help do with some of the cyclical inspections. Values are based on sales of the past calendar year. So the values for fiscal 2025, our current fiscal year, were for sales that took place in calendar year 2023. So those do the basic values. You may have 3 houses that look the same. One may have a finished basement, the other 2 don't. One may have 2.5 baths, where the other one only has 1.5. So although they may look the same from the exterior, the interiors are different. That affects their individual
If
values.
somebody pays $1 million for a house, that's on the deed, $1 million.
$1 million, mhm.
Do they get a tax bill for $1 million?
If it's new build, it's going to be,
I mean, is their assessment,
yes.
is
their
it $1
va-
million?
If it's new build, it's going to be closer to that $1 million.
It's gonna be close.
It's going to be close. If it's an older home that's been
A little depreciated?
a little depreciated.
Okay.
It's not going to be at that $1 million.
Okay.
I just want to go back to
But
one.
values
yeah.
go up, we'll do an
No, I
average
know.
value increases 3%. So all of your home's going to increase 3%. It doesn't mean your taxes are going to go, everyone's taxes are going up $500. It's a percentage increase
Right.
from your current value.
Right.
And I think that's the one point that people miss, because I see it all the time and hear it all the time. When the town needs more money, we're just gonna increase the assessment on the home. And I have it like on a Word document that I cut and paste into Facebook that says, no, that's not how it works. If everybody's home doubled in value, the tax rate would fall by half, So it's one of those, roughly, I know you're precise, I'm
Right.
I'm a generalist.
But we
Yeah.
review our values every year.
Yeah.
At one time, it was done every 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
But that makes it hard, because if
was-
values jump up too high, you'll go from 500,000
that.
to 1 million, and what
I
happened?
but
But
I-
if you do it over time, and again, at the same time, if values drop, you're gonna stay at that 500,000 when you really should be down
Yeah.
at 350.
But I absolutely, I was just saying that. I remember that. There used to be a reval every 3
3
years.
years.
When did it go to every year?
Since I've been doing this, the towns I worked with, we did it every year. What happened every 3 years was the Department of Revenue coming in and doing an intense review of the towns.
Okay.
Now the Department of Revenue comes in every 5 years and does an intense review. They review every year, but they do that intense recertification every 5 years now.
Okay.
Okay, interesting. It's interesting.
It is interesting, it's
And
very
not only that,
confusing.
the other thing that changed incredibly was, 20 or 30 years ago, if you paid $500,000 for a house and you got your first tax bill, that appraised value was so much lower. It was so much, am I?
Over time, that's what's, we've
But
made
now,
those corrections.
it's-
We've made those corrections over time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
We have
guess
made
you
those
may-
corrections over
Now
time.
they're practically spot on to us, to the purchase price.
yeah.
Am I
That's,
not?
those are,
correct?
but that's falling within the guidelines of what the
No,
state
I'm
wants
not-
us to do,
I'm not
wants us to do.
complaining.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but some people wouldn't understand that.
But
And
I-
it's, we do
I
have
always thought it
guidelines.
was towns playing it safe and not trying to get, a million
No.
abatement applications.
No, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you can, but eventually it would catch up with you, so no, we
Right.
don't do that.
Okay.
I have one question. George Friedman Wills, 5 Frontier Lane. You said that Prop 2.5 says you're allowed to take the tax base, add 2.5%. And then, but inflation's been up 2.5% for about 30 years. So it's even higher now, but even when things were okay,
Yeah.
it wasn't always around 3. That's what your financial advisor would always tell you, 3%. So how have towns managed with that?
Not
Very
easy.
Because they're basically getting,
Well,
they're basically getting
yeah.
knocked 0.5% a year.
We've been fortunate because we had the new
growth.
growth when Glen Ellen opened, when all the new places opened. That brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars of new growth. And now that goes into your next year's tax base. Eventually, we'll stop developing those. We were fortunate that we had a marijuana distribution that opened, and that gave us revenue that helped out. We were fortunate with up until when I started in the finance committee, state aid was growing at 2.5%. Now it's growing at $44 or falling by $44. I can't remember when I looked at it net. $44, not percent. So flat, it's nothing. But it's almost impossible. And that's why towns that are successful and are able to fund things do overrides every 3 to 5 years. We've done an override 18 years ago.
Yeah.
And we're not going to go back out and ask for an operational override again for a while because people see it as a failure. But towns that are successful do $500,000, $1 million every 3 to 5 years. And that keeps them able to stay ahead of that 2.5% growth rate that you have on your property taxes with inflation running at, let's be
Right.
optimistic and say 3.
Yeah.
I mean, I will also like to point out, aside from real estate taxes, but you bring up a great point, it's on the expenditure side also. So towns have had to be creative through shared services agreements or intermunicipal agreements where we share resources across different communities because it doesn't make fiscal sense to have let's
Our
say, one of our own, right? So we do that currently with other communities for our animal control, so we're able to share expenses and services. So we have to look across the board to other things beyond, the revenues that we're coming in. And a lot of times we ask people to do more with less, right? I mean, that's just the nature of where we're at. So we can only grow as fast as, as we can manage the expenses with it. So it does put communities in tough positions, but like the board has said, we've managed to do more with less and be creative, and that clock will run out at some point.
Eventually.
But we need to be conservative on our revenue estimates so that we have a targeted amount of free cash at the end of the year, which is again within the Department of Revenue guidelines of 3 to 5% of your operating budget. So as long as we're, running conservatively in those areas, then we have some free cash at the end of the year to do the capital things that we need to do. And we can buy that new truck that we need and replace that, school van or whatever it is that we need to do. So again, it's not a short answer, but it's a lot of moving parts that help us to be
Yeah,
successful.
And I'll take it down to, again, prior to 5 years ago, we didn't pave roads. You can kind of tell. But we used just the state money for roads. So the first thing that was cut, when we needed money to pay teachers, firemen, paramedics, police officers, was road repair, because that gave us money that could go into operations. We've been fortunate with the new growth to get back on a cycle for the last 5 years, where it's been at least $500,000 of our tax money on roads every year. And if you stay for the entire meeting, you're going to hear about this year, which will be another large amount of money. So strategic cuts were made, but they weren't pleasant cuts, and layoffs occurred. So it wasn't just not paving roads. We let 22 teachers go or educators go because we didn't have an override that passed. So those things happen, and people pretend like they don't, but they really do. We let 22 go. 15 years ago, we let a few guidance counselors go, but it wasn't as dramatic as the 22 teachers, but it adds up, and then it makes things worse.
Any more questions? John?
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
Why not? All good, healthy conversation.
Nice.
More points of clarification. John Lohr, 247 Pleasant Street. Question for Craig, because when the 2.5 levy goes up, and that's as far as you can go up, you said some properties will go up in value and some will go down in value. What would be an example of a property going down in value?
I'm just saying, never my house,
That's 'cause
never
I'm
your
in it.
house. I'm just saying, if you can,
Exactly.
it's just math. If you can only increase 2.5%.
Understood.
And your taxes go up 5%, somebody's had to go down someplace. Because if you can only move the total amount of revenues collected up 2.5, and yours goes up 5, mine went up.
I get
5%,
that.
yeah.
I'm looking
You
for
want
an
an
example,
example? Do you have an
and I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot either. I'm just
I
trying to
don't
look
think I want
for.
to call out anybody, because, okay, it's all out there as public records. I
Yeah.
dug around.
Go ahead.
Sure.
I'm not gonna name names,
No,
but you
no,
can
no.
find people who went down. There are places we
You
can.
went down.
Oh, yeah,
No,
yeah.
I never went down.
In terms of changing the assessed value of their
Change the
property,
assessed
changing their
value.
their tax.
Changing the assessed
yeah.
value dropped in
Okay,
some places.
so that would be an example.
My land went up 25%
Yeah.
a few years ago.
Well, let's talk about that. Remember that when the land values went crazy a few years ago? I'm looking at you. How did you explain that to me? Was it just a reval or something?
I believe that was before I started in Millis, but.
Oh, I
land
don't-
va-
Let's take that.
No, no. It was
But no, look, land values the problem with land values is, we're not gonna grow any more land.
Right.
So as people are buying properties, tearing down houses, splitting lots, it's making land more valuable. They're taking that acre lot and splitting it into 3 different lots. So
So
all
the
of
3
that acre
different lots
lot.
now are more than the sum of the original one.
Yes.
Is that because you have 3 dwellings on 3 pieces
Yes.
of property now?
Yes.
And it's,
So they're full, those lots are,
And-
they're
and the
buildable
dwelling's
lots,
worth
so
more
they're
than
gonna
the
have a
land.
higher value.
So John, I'll give you an example without naming any names. In condos, you don't own the land.
Great
So when
point.
my land went up 25% and my house value went up 5% valuation, on the 2 of them, my taxes went up 6 or 7%. I don't have a big lot.
Yeah.
But but if you have a condo, you don't own the land it's sitting on. So
Yep.
therefore, If you're just using the same theory, if
Great
you just
example.
increase
Yep.
revenue from land,
Yep.
the tax amount on land, if you don't have any land, your building probably came down.
Yep,
So,
thank you for clarifying that. So on that, talking about growth rates then, so we know that we're gonna get to 2.5, and then the growth rate is the big variable in terms of bridging the gap between what our town budget is, correct? So that's very important going forward. What that growth is good for the town, even though we're struggling for a commercial base within the town, because we're kind of a pass-through community in terms of commuter going back and forth, so more of a comment. Last kind of question is, since Millis and other towns are struggling with this, year in, year out, and we've been fortunate for the growth in Millis, do you see the state looking for an override, increasing state taxes? I'm not looking for an opinion, I'm just looking for more, what's in the future? Would the state have to go from 5.25 to 6.25
I
type
don't
of a
think we
thing?
get much from the state on revenue, but Jody knows more about this. I think it'd be Prop 2.5. that
Yeah,
might
I mean,
need-
Yeah.
I don't,
Thank you.
I can't foresee what they're doing, but I think this goes back to the discussion earlier about the Ways and Means in the meeting that's happening next
Yeah.
Monday, in that, there's a lot of things that we don't control, and when we talk about revenues, we'll talk about two major components of revenue, which is the levy and state aid that we don't control. We are at the will of the state with regards to how much we get in aid, and there is a formula. There's a formula for Chapter 70, which helps fund our schools. There's a formula for Chapter 90, which helps pave our roads. And there are calculations that are done. So until those things change, we're status quo as it relates to how we're getting our aid. So kind of a long answer to a simple question, but, the reality is we don't really control, obviously, what the state does, and the only ways to drive that change are through the underlying mechanisms by which our state aid and other things are calculated. So again, just another reason to show your support, for that private group that's trying to drive some change on that front.
Yeah, and those formulas are old, 25 years old on the school formula.
Almost 30 years old.
So
Prop
it's,
2.5 was established, what, in 1980?
1981?
81?
and if that had even been indexed for inflation, it wouldn't have been an issue.
Right,
you know?
right, but it's
Yeah.
not.
It's not, so you got
right.
what you got, yeah.
And the other mention, we haven't talked too much about new growth, but just the idea of that, just so that people understand, we are able to capture some of new growth before it's entirely done. And what I mean by that is, if we can reasonably anticipate that we are going to receive X amount of dollars through taxation for a partially built property, for a partially completed new building, right? Anything. We're able to assess on a percentage complete. So we don't have to wait, hurry up and get that building done so we can collect the taxes.
That's
So
another.
we're able to do that periodically. So where you see a big boost in growth, you'll see that growth having come over the last, 2 to 3 years prior to its full valuation
Right.
is on the books. So that's just another thing to be mindful of. We do see the dribs and drabs of the new growth over time, and it's based on what we can reasonably anticipate happening. It's not just, oh, how many new projects are out there? It's a lot more behind the scenes. As far as open permits, sometimes never get closed because the project never happens. So we can't base our new growth number projections on just open permits.
That's another
So
change.
just other things to
Back in the
be
old
mindful
days.
of.
Back in the old days, if you built a building, you could typically, depending on the town and how wealthy they were, you could have 2 or 3 years before you even got assessed for that building. It took that long for the town to catch up. You would still get land only. I don't know how long you've been in this, but now, you go out there and you put a sign on there with a DEP number, and you get a tax bill for $1,000 because you just improved the property with a sign. So.
You probably
think
have a
I'm-
perk test done
you
though,
think
Ellen,
I'm-
so
you think
that
I'm-
counts.
You think I'm kidding? That's,
This is very personal.
seriously, you could go at least 2 or 3.
And projects take time too, right?
No,
So,
but-
but I know what you're saying.
My
I know what
point
you're saying.
being
Yep.
that they just didn't, I don't know if they didn't need the money,
I don't-
or weren't smart enough to realize, but you could go quite a few cycles without getting assessed, and then you'd finally get your bill like 2 or 3 years later, so. Those days are gone.
Yep.
But yeah, any other questions? Was this good? You learn anything?
Yes.
Good, good, all good. All right.
Well, Terry and I love doing this
Thank
stuff,
you.
so
Yeah.
anytime anyone wants
Terry wants
additional
to come to every
education.
meeting, I know she
Next
does.
is state aid, right? No.
No,
No, not until we have something good to report on state aid.
nope, nope, nope. All right, thank you so much.
you.
That was super. Okay. Council on Aging Study. Anne Marie. Nice party today, Anne Marie.
Thank
Anne Marie
you.
threw a great
Thank you.
St. Patrick's
Well,
Day
those who
party
attended
downstairs.
made it a great party, so my thanks to everybody who
Awesome.
attended. Thank you. So good evening, Anne Marie Gagnon, Council on Aging Director. That was a momentous moment that you just had. I thought it
Momentous?
was great. Yes, yes. And
So I have to change the name.
It's a municipal moment, yeah.
so a few minutes tonight. My friend, Dr. Coyle, is on with us this evening. She has been waiting for this moment, and I appreciate her patience. So I'm here tonight. It was a great segue by Ms. Kersey and Terry Gonsalves as well to talk about shared services, because
Okay.
that is what I am here to give you an update on. So last year, we did part 1 of a shared services study with Council on Aging work with Millis and the town of Medway. And we had, the study is on our website pages for the Council on Aging. And we basically looked at both Councils on Aging, the programs and services that were provided, and just, basically see both Councils on Aging on paper. It was a great exercise. We received another legislative earmark this year to do part 2 of that study, which is to delve deeper, and this time we are going to be partnering with Dr. Caitlin Coyle, UMass Gerontology Institute for Social and Demographic Research, and her team to do a needs assessment of our older residents, age 60 and older and over in Millis as well as Medway, and see what factors are, how they feel about aging in these two towns, and see what sort of shared services or programs or unique things that we can possibly do together as two communities. So with that, Dr. Coyle, I'd like to have her introduce herself and share some slides about our project and its metrics.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Everybody hear me all right?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Awesome, thank you, good. All right, well, good to be with you all. As Anne Marie mentioned, I'm from UMass Boston, the Gerontology Institute, working with Anne Marie on this, and Courtney really on this project, that I'm just gonna give you a little bit of a high-level view of what we're planning to do and why we're gonna do it, and give people a heads up that it's coming to their mailboxes later this spring. So I will
There we go.
share my screen here, and essentially more about us at UMass. We're one research center within the Gerontology Institute. We've been around for a while, and we've worked with cities and towns across Massachusetts, more than 80 to date. And really, those projects look a little different in every community, but the sort of common thread is that we work together with residents, mostly through the Council on Aging boards, but as well as other residents, in engaging them in a process of understanding what they need, what they want, what their futures, what they want their futures to look like in their communities, and provide recommendations and data to communities about how they can plan for the aging of the population. So this is something that we've done all over the state. We are working with Millis and Medway specifically to understand and prioritize the needs of residents, I'll say needs and preferences of residents of both Millis and Medway, and really to think about how the community can maintain itself as a place to age well, And we intend to, provide these results to the Council on Aging for the purposes of identifying possible areas for collaboration, maybe to broaden range of services, particularly related to all aspects of health, physical, mental, and social access to programs and services and caregiving, sort of the things that happen within the four walls of the senior center, the things we all think about in terms of programming, but also the things that maybe we don't always think about that maybe are happening in people's lives that affect their ability to age well, understanding what the levels of need are across these communities and identifying some places for the Council on Aging to work together to meet some of those more challenging and pervasive needs. It's also intended to raise awareness of aging-related issues townwide and inform other municipal departments as they consider their own practices. This idea that aging doesn't just happen at the senior center, it affects our communities in lots of ways, and so thinking about how we can both acknowledge that demographic shift and support older residents and engage them as they live in our communities. And then lastly, to inform strategic planning for the Council on Aging, both, in Millis. So it's sort of like, what are the places we can come together to work together to sort of address some of these more pervasive needs? How can we get the word out about what we're doing and why it's important? And also using this information to put a roadmap in place for the future of the Millis Council on Aging. So it's meant to be a comprehensive sort of needs assessment. As Anne-Marie said, we did sort of the on-the-paper comparison of the communities in terms of their sort of organizational capacity. This part 2 is really about hearing from the residents. It's about hearing from the community and talking with them. Just to give you a sense of the populations of the two communities, this is comparing the age distribution of Millis and Medway based on 2023 American Community Survey estimates. And I'll just, highlight a couple of things. One, that you've got about a third of the town of Millis identifying as people age 60 and over, which is how we define older adults in the U.S. And that's compared to 23% of Medway residents. Obviously, Medway's a bigger place. But the other thing that I think is interesting to note is that when you look at the actual number of residents 60 plus, they're actually very similar in Millis and Medway. So you've got about 2,800, 2,900 residents in Millis who are 60 plus, and it's about the same 2,900 in Medway. So when you're talking about the group of people that's being served by the Council on Aging, the size of that population is relatively similar at the moment, although we anticipate that will change over time. But so we're talking about these two communities in terms of their resident needs. What are we going to do? We're going to build on the part 1 of this project, but really, again, sort of try to spend our time talking with residents in 2 major ways. One is through focus groups. So groups of residents coming together to talk about their needs, their experiences aging in Millis and Medway, and how, what are the kinds of things that would improve life for them. We're also going to be mailing a survey to all residents age 60 and over in both towns. So I'll talk a little bit about that actual survey process, but we are mailing those surveys to people later this spring. And we are also doing some key informant interviews, not necessarily with local officials, but really content area experts. So the idea is once we sort of recognize what some of the shared needs are across these communities, we're hoping to sort of work with other people we know in the state and other communities in terms of if that topic area happens to be social isolation, well, what's going on in that area, and how do we think about interventions or initiatives that could work in communities like Millis and Medway. So the idea is to sort of harness some best practices or some promising practices from around the state so that the ultimate product that's being delivered is a bunch of information about the older residents, both quantitative and qualitative information data to the Council on Aging with some strategies for going forward on some of these key issues. And so all of that will be pulled together. Some key dates that I just wanted to make the community aware of. One is on May 6th. We will be mailing that postcard. It's going to be a yellow cardstock postcard. It's coming to each individual, so if you have more than one person 60 plus in your household, you will expect to get more than one postcard. That's basically just a heads up. It gives you some information about who to call if you have questions, and a reminder of what it's about. And then about a week later, on May 13th, we're going to be mailing that survey out. It will come with a prepaid, pre-stamped return envelope So we're hoping that it's very easy for people to fill it out and send it back in to us. Because the information that we're gathering will, as I said, sort of hopefully have a broad application in terms of informing the Council on Aging services and programs both now and in the future. So I just wanted to give everybody a heads up, this process is happening, we're getting started, we're very excited to be working with Courtney over in Medway as well as Anne Marie. I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has any, and I appreciate the time this evening.
Thank you, Caitlin, I appreciate it. Anybody have any questions?
Anything? I don't have anything. Anybody in the audience have anything?
No, it's very exciting.
It is exciting,
It is
yeah.
exciting, because she was just talking about sharing, and
Yeah,
Yes.
we need to share.
yeah.
How do we make the population we excited to want to fill out the surveys and send them in? That's
How,
always
say,
been a
say
concern.
that, say that?
She had
How
a
do we
point.
get the public to be as excited as we are in this room so that they'll fill out the surveys, not
Well, will
toss
you have a bunch of them in your downstairs?
Right, so I think, Caitlin, we will have some downstairs of the Council on Aging, and we encourage people, I mean, they'll get the reason we're here is because we didn't want to surprise people, you know, we've announced that it's coming, there'll be the yellow postcard in the mail, the survey. How many questions is the survey, Caitlin?
It's about 40, which sounds long, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll take whatever you can give us.
Okay. And it will have a cover
It's
letter.
about 15 minutes to complete, and it includes open-ended questions for you to write in your own words, what's going on, as well as close-ended things. Yeah, so I think,
Is
right.
this, I know you're
Coming first, we want to tell our friends.
I know you're mailing them, but are they online also?
Yes,
Oh,
It will be
yes.
available online, and people can also, on the postcard as well as on the survey itself, there will be a phone number. They can actually also call us at UMass, and I'll have some graduate students who will be helping people do the survey over the telephone if they would prefer to do it over the phone versus on paper or online.
Survey parties.
Right. And then the survey will also come with a welcome letter on behalf of the town, and Medway as well, so nobody's shocked. It's, you know, it's going to have some nice information about why we're doing this and, you know, how they can help to inform the study. Okay? All right, good.
Have you ever got to,
If we could get a link to the, can you provide us with a link and we can put it on our?
Yes.
Sure.
Absolutely,
my page
yes,
and everybody's
absolutely.
page? That'd be good.
Yeah, we'll take care of that as well.
Great.
That's good.
Yeah, spreading the word will be wonderful, and want to just really, you know, today, we don't want anyone to think it's a scam.
Exactly.
Of all the things I would think is a scam, this wouldn't be one of them.
No.
That's just me. What's up, Joyce?
There's
question?
conversation, could there ever be, and I said it tongue in cheek, but survey parties where you actually had specific days, afternoons where people could gather downstairs or upstairs or in a hall where it was where it was actually set up an appointment, an actual date that people could come and just fill out their survey so that then, I don't know.
Well, I'm gonna have the researcher address that because I'm worried about how much individual accounts matter. You know, we could have a group come. I mean, I like the fact that there's a phone number that UMass is gonna be able to help answer questions.
Yes,
Our staff would be able to too, but we also want it to be,
unbiased.
there you go. Caitlin, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would just elaborate on what you're getting at, Anne Marie, which is that if you have a group of people doing the surveys together, they're chit-chatting, they're
Yeah.
sharing their responses, and they might be likely to change their.
They're going to be coerced, Joyce. Coercion.
They might answer if they were taking it as privacy of their home. It's, you know, this isn't an overly controversial topic, so we hope that it won't be that big of a deal, but I think, yeah, I think it's a great idea, and I think anything like that, that is really, I will say that, and we talked to Anne Marie about this, that the place where we're gonna lean on you all in the community is to get the word out, is to get people excited about taking the survey, because the data that we provide back is only as good as the data we get back. And, you know, we typically experience between 25 and 35% response rates, which is very good, and we anticipate that happening here as well, but that local excitement is always beneficial to getting people to show up and,
Right. Yes, thank you, Caitlin. Yeah, maybe we can talk about some incentives along the way as well. But thanks, Joyce, for the question. It was really important.
oh, you're welcome.
Okay, good. All right, well, I'm going to let Dr. Coyle go. Thank you so much for waiting
Thank
so
you.
patiently. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so any other questions?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Well,
you.
More to
thank you.
come. Thank you.
Okay, next. Next, and next.
Did we lose Jim?
Nope, he'll be back. Yeah, where's Jim?
Yeah.
Get up here. Please.
Seems like we
Sorry.
have a few items here.
What are we talking about first? There's a lot. Paving?
Road paving, come
Sure.
on, this is the big item.
The big item. So I'm going to give you in your packet, I will put this online tomorrow, but I wanted to present this to you first. I think it was only fair, for that to happen. I did, so you can see, I did give you 23, 24, 25. I mean, Craig, you'd said this earlier, $500,000. I mean, the three of you have been here for a while now. This is millions of dollars of work.
Yeah.
Millions, not a million. We're talking millions of
Multiple
dollars of
millions,
work that the town has given us to pave these roads. And it's going to be the same this year, coming up for FY '26. We have a remaining balance of the $500,000 that was given in November, and there was 60-something thousand left. So we have like $560,000 of town money and approximately $600,000 plus for Chapter 90 funding that will be available on July 1st for that amount. So what I'm proposing for, and I gave you copies of the maps of what we're, and where did I get this from? We did a study in 2019,
I'll look over your shoulder.
and they come from that. That's where it comes from. Although the 2019, they're so outdated and the roads are so far gone, it's all gone. I mean, it doesn't really mean all that much. So what we would like to propose is the first for FY '26, and I'll talk about Route 109 at the end of this, is Orchard Street from Middlesex to Ridge Street, but there is a section that was not paved when Toll Brothers, when they relayed the gas main, so they left half of it left. We'll also put that in there to take care of that. Another one is Myrtle Street. I don't know how many of you have driven down Myrtle Street. It's atrocious. We'll do from Himmelfarb to Pleasant Street, and we're going to go in at, as I believe that's Station 2, go in and take care of that front of that parking lot, in front of the fire station. Next is Park Road, and when I say Park Road, we're talking about the entrance from Main Street here, and it will make it around to the loop of the back of the parking lot here. And then there's a section that's been much debated about is the access road in between the tennis courts and the pond.
Right.
That we're gonna have to reclaim, and because it was never built for a road, it was just built as a driveway type entrance.
Are we gonna make it a road?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it will be brought up to quality.
Okay.
Next would be Milliston Road, and that would be from the Stony Brook entrance, I think it's called Stony Brook Road or Stony Brook Lane, to Main Street. And then lastly, this is an endeavor, I mean, if we can do this, I mean, if the money's there, and if we can go this far, Pollard Drive, and that would be from Union Street all the way into Clark Road, into that little intersection. It's a connecting road, so we'd like to do that, if the funds are available. But I usually put something that's gonna be number one next year. Like Orchard Street was like 4th or 5th pick last year, so it moved up to number one. So this could be depending on that. So what we'd like to do that, I mean, I don't need a vote, but if you approve of that, I'd like to start getting this already, measurements, and get it out to bid to see where the amount of funds are.
I know it's not written here, but you are gonna look at in front of the entrance to the middle high school,
That's something we're gonna do internally.
completely
Yes,
separate.
we're gonna meet about that on the 20th
Right.
at 2 o'clock.
Okay,
That's something totally different. Yep,
totally different.
yep,
I like different.
Yeah, I think this plan looks really good.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great,
It
great.
looks good.
Yep.
And the status, and you may have said this while I was looking at maps.
No, he's going to,
No, I'm gonna
Oh.
talk about that right now.
right now.
Yep.
See, I wasn't paying attention to the
Yep.
beginning because I was looking at the map.
Yep, 109.
You agree that? we
Oh, that's
can-
a good
I mean, I'm
one.
gonna come back to you, because you're gonna have to approve it. I
Right.
mean,
Oh,
once
yeah,
we get
yeah.
the funding and all that, so, we're with that. So, 109, how did we get to 109? 109, let's go back a couple of years ago, and I would encourage you all to, Senator Rebecca Roush actually put this funding in as, she'll call up any day now, and she'll say to the town administrator, what do you got? What's your wish list? And we'll fill out something, and we'll write a letter, and 109, this funding actually was for sidewalks from Pleasant Street to the Medway Town Line, and they didn't particularly like that, because they felt we should go under the Complete Streets Act and stuff like that. So we changed it midstream to assisting us paving Route 109. And that was several years ago. And Erin, you remember, you sent her emails, and they followed up. They did a good job assisting us with this. The senator and her staff did a good, we don't get this if she didn't push this along for us. So they did come up, and I will post this online. The DPW actually had a great week last week. We signed the town administrator signed a contract for $100,000, which again came from an earmark from the senator, who assisted us in getting those funds. And then he signed the contract just Thursday or Friday for $1.7 something million for assistance on paving Route 109. We've never gotten this far with actually signing the contract, so we signed the contract. We're told that it could be a May, June type situation, but it will be done in this construction season, which would be the end of October, on those lines.
You're
It's
talking about 109.
109,
From
right.
where to where?
So I'm gonna give you the, and again, I'll post this all, we have pictures
Okay.
of that, and I think you have that. So we're
Yep.
talking about the Medway Town Line to Tractor Supply, where we started that's where we did a section. The next section would be from Hammond Lane to the police station. And then the largest section would be from Milliston Road all the way to the Medfield Town Line.
That's the
And
worst.
if you look at
Yeah.
there's a
Right.
section
Oh, yeah.
that we talked about, and we talked them into, they're gonna go all the way up to Dover Road, right as it turns the bend there onto Dover Road, so that, right around the sewer station and stuff like that. Again, like I said, that's $1.7 million. That's a pretty big.
Yeah.
Most towns don't get this. Usually you have to put it in for a tip program, but somehow maybe the constant emailing from all of us, and we'll continue.
You think?
I mean, we'll continue this, because it's got to get done. It's just got to get done. So that's it on paving, I believe.
Okay.
Next we have, what do we have?
Snow and ice?
Snow and ice. So we weren't as lucky this year as we have in the past two previous years. I gave you a breakdown of what was funded, what was left, and we have exceeded already $54,000 in the snow and ice budget. And so I would ask that you fund these three items, and they're all related to snow and ice, in a not-to-exceed amount of $75,000. Right now, we're 54 in the hole, and that, Michael will explain how that gets paid. I don't think it has to be paid this meeting. I think we have, a year to fund that, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's a process at the end of the year where that gets adjusted, but we are allowed under state law, actually Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 31D.
Might get closer to-
It's one of the very few items that the town is actually allowed to spend in the red, because it's an unknown amount because of the weather. So I did speak with the DPW director about this, and we are recommending that the board approve the deficit spending in an amount not to exceed $75,000 from the snow and ice account. So, and again, that we work with the finance director as we enter the new fiscal year, and that gets adjusted within our numbers at that point.
And just a question, because it comes up, why don't we put, and I think I know the answer, but I just want
I
to
know.
make sure. Why don't we put more money into snow and ice? This wasn't a particularly bad winter. Is it true that once you put money in, you
You
can
can't
never
get rid
reduce
of
That
it?
is true. Once you put money in, you cannot reduce it, ever. If you reduce it, then you can never again go spend into the red.
So we always
It's just, it's a
know
law,
that.
state law.
Yeah, we've typically known that we've underfunded, but then
But that's the
whatever
smart
climate
thing to do.
change, yeah.
We
this
did
is
have
the
a
thing
year or
to do,
two
yeah.
where we didn't need all of
Yeah,
it
yeah.
recently.
2
Did
years.
did you ever get that salt you were waiting for?
So we did. I mean,
did?
and the
You
good
were
thing
like the
about.
last one in the state to get salt?
Not the last, but with this 54,000, the salt shed is full, and knock on wood, we won't use it for the rest of the year. We'll be ready for next season.
You ready for a motion?
We are. We ready? Yes.
Yes.
I move that the board approve deficit spending in an amount not to exceed $75,000 in the snow, yes, in the snow and ice account in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 31D.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay.
Okay, what do we have the
The pump
The
and motor.
Williamson pump.
Williamson pump contract? So this is an emergency request, and it's just, we have these funds that are in the sewer account, and we'll be taking them out of the sewer reserve fund that we have in each account. And then it's in the amount of $17,330. This is for the Timberline Sewer Lift Station. Right now, the system is running on one pump, and you always need two. I mean, usually one will go on for 12 hours, it will come off, and the other one will go on. This one is, it just burnt out. They took it out by crane, and I say bench tested it, and it's a large pump, but it's not huge, but it's more than a bench test. But they tried to fix it, and they couldn't, so we have to replace the pump itself. And that would be in the amount of $17,330.
Okey-dokes.
I move that the board approve a contract with Williamson Pump and Motor to install a new motor at the Timberline Road Sewer Lift Station for an amount not to exceed $17,330, and to authorize the town administrator to sign the contract on behalf of the board.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Tie and bond, is that?
Yes.
And the rate
Yeah.
study.
So the rate study, I've been trying to get the enterprise committee meeting, and we finally met tonight, and they did approve what I'm going to explain to you. The last rate study we did for the water sewer, it was done back in, I would say, 2010, and it's been a long time. Maybe it's been one was done before that. And we've held off for the past 3-4 years. If you remember, I think I've talked about this, and then we're going to do it next year, but with the cost of the PFAS plants and grants and stuff like that, we weren't exactly sure, what was next and how much. So we were just setting the rates because of the costs of what we're going to get us from one plant to the next. This will give the board and the town administrator, the DPW director, insight when we go back to the treasurer collector to set the rates. It'll give us a 3 to 5 year outlook. Right now, the reserve funds, the water is very low. It wouldn't, there's not enough there to take on any major catastrophe at one of the stations if a pump went and it needed major work. The other two are pretty well off, the stormwater and the sewer. There was never a rate study ever done for the stormwater, I'm sorry. There was never one done for the stormwater, and that will be included in this. So that 20,000 amount with tie and bond, it's somebody else different than Kleinfelder. And that we've worked with tie and bond on our rates for the past 8, 9, 10 years. And that will be split between stormwater, sewer, and water, sewer and stormwater. And the Enterprise Committee did recommend this. They're going to send the chair an email stating their vote that they took tonight for this. They haven't sent it yet, they're going to.
Do we have any questions? Anybody?
No.
No.
Nope, nope, and nope.
I move that the board approve a contract with Tie and Bond to develop an electronic rate model for water, sewer, stormwater for an amount not to exceed $20,000, and to authorize the town administrator to sign the contract on behalf of the board.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
And lastly, I think we pulled off did you even put that on there?
I think the other one got pulled off, I think.
So just to quick up, we had an article we were going to put on for, an interfunction transfer, or was it, what do you call it? I forget. We were going to go to the Finance Committee on Wednesday night.
reserve fund transfer.
Reserve fund transfer.
You're
if it-
going to go to?
We were going to, but we found that we have the funds in the, if anybody drives around Millis, they can all of a sudden see that all the streetlights, and I'm talking about the streetlights, they're all out. Something happened.
You're talking about the ornamental?
No, not
The
the
real
crappy
ones.
ornamental
Streetlights.
lights.
You
Oh, we
said there
talked
were
about
like-
this.
you
Yeah,
said
this
there were
is
like
40-something.
30-something gone.
Yeah, there's 42 of them, and so we're gonna do that in-house. So I'll pull that off theirs on Wednesday night, but,
How are you gonna do it in-house?
well, we're gonna pay for it in-house. I mean, we're not gonna do the work, I'm
alright.
sorry, yeah. So that,
We
I thought it
we
was-
have
yeah.
sufficient funds, so we
we
don't
have
have to go
sufficient
back
funds, we
and
don't have to go
request
for that.
additional
Well,
funds.
right now, we don't, but
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
So that's off the table for Wednesday night.
Yes.
Okay, what do we got next? We got the,
Mr. Weiss,
A contract.
permitting and planning guidebook.
perfect.
Thank you. As you remember, we received a $170,000 earmark from the 2022 Chapter 268 earmarks, and that was for creating a business improvement district study. The Economic Development Committee preferred, instead of the Business Improvement District study, to create a permitting and zoning guidebook for businesses that want to do development in Millis. So I went back to the state, we tried to, we changed the scope, and the state said, fine, as long as you do the Business Improvement District as a blueprint for what to do. So we now have 2 projects. We issued a RFP for a consultant in November, and in January, the Economic Development Committee interviewed 2 highly qualified contestants for the project, and they unanimously decided that they would choose the partners of, that are headed by Aaron Schaefer, LLC, Aaron Schaefer Land Use, and which includes, her 2 partners are very highly qualified for this. One actually wrote the book for the business improvement districts for the state. So tonight I'm asking the board to approve and sign the contract for creating a permitting and zoning guidebook and a business improvement district blueprint with Aaron L. Schaefer Land Use Consulting for an amount not to exceed $100,000.
Perfect. I don't see that we need a motion.
Yes, we do.
We
Yes.
do.
Oh, do we have one?
Yes.
Yes,
I move that the
24 or
board
45.
approve a contract with Aaron L. Schaefer Land Use Consulting LLC to create a permitting and zoning guidebook and a business improvement district blueprint for an amount not to exceed $100,000, and to authorize the select board chair to sign the contract on behalf of the board.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Actually, all 3 of you will have to sign it, and
Okay.
Mr. Guzinski
Okay.
does have the contract.
Okay.
Okay, great. What else have we got?
I think, Bob, you were going to just address briefly the zero emissions vehicle policy, the
Right.
status of that.
Energy Committee was going to present a zero-emission vehicle first policy. However, the committee has amended the state's template to the point where we'd like to send it back to the state to review it, so we'll bring it in
Next time.
at the next time. All right? And
Oh, one more thing, the ADU.
Yeah.
and one more thing.
Is that you, Bob?
I guess so, because nobody else is here to do it. The chair of the planning board wishes to inform this board of a public hearing that is for proposed amendments to the zoning bylaws. The proposed amendments regard the by right permitting of the accessory dwelling units, or ADU, in order to provide more housing options for people, more affordable housing for folks, and to give homeowners and property owners more flexibility in their properties. The proposed public hearing is set for Tuesday, April 8th at the planning board meeting. And the chair asked the Select Board tonight to refer the proposal back to the Planning Board to prepare for the town meeting.
Okay, great.
I move that the board refer the proposed zoning bylaw amendments for accessory dwelling unit, ADU, to the planning board for a public hearing on Tuesday, April 8th, 2025.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous.
Great, thank you
Okay,
very
thanks,
much.
Bob.
Have a good evening.
You too.
You too.
Nice job, Bob.
Good job, Bob. Okay, next on the agenda.
So,
We want to talk about the special act for qualified seniors for waiver of school construction costs.
yes, Madam Chair,
You
in the.
want to talk about it? Go.
Yeah, I'll just, if I could begin at the board's request, I did pull together some information regarding a special act that was established for the town of Hopkinton. The act was was filed in the House by Representative Irina DeRosa of Holliston, who also represents portions of the town of Millis. The act, I believe it's the first of its kind in Massachusetts, was approved last summer. And just to talk about it very briefly, the act, as approved for the town of Hopkinton, does allow seniors within the community of Hopkinton who meet certain financial criteria, the ability to apply for a waiver, which would allow them to not be assessed for the cost of new school building projects to their property taxes. There are a number of requirements involved in that. I think the chief among them is a requirement that that senior be eligible for the circuit breaker income tax credit under the general laws. This would basically assure that people of limited means, seniors of limited means, would be the ones that would have the option of accessing this waiver. Also, the individual would need to be over 65. The individual will have needed to be a full-time resident of the community for at least 10 years. There are certain requirements. So
Right.
I know the town is currently in consideration of a major school project, and again, at the board's request, I pull this information before you for your consideration. If it's something that you are interested in the town pursuing, it would require an approval at a town meeting
Yes.
to authorize the select board to request the filing of the special act by our legislative delegation.
Right. So this came to our attention, I don't even know how, but somehow it came to our attention. And so we spoke to Representative Irina DeRosa, and he in fact did file this petition with Hopkinton. Hopkinton doesn't have any current school building construction projects, but they got it passed, and I guess they're gonna put it in their pocket until they have such a thing. Well, we're gonna have such a thing, possibly. And so we talked to him, and we really don't know too much about it, except that it went in as authorized to establish a means-tested senior citizen property tax exemption for school building construction projects. It's very specific. And I like everything about it, but unfortunately, we don't know a lot about it. We don't know what all the parameters are gonna mean, how many people it's gonna affect, but it's something to consider. And again, it goes to town meeting, so we would just put it on and let the people decide. Is there any way to know
Well,
more?
There's a few
before?
things to consider as we do it.
Yes.
First off, for every senior that is taken off that will increase the property taxes paid by everybody else, because we just had that phenomenal presentation. So and I'm not gonna rehash it, but I will do, if we take 10 people off it that aren't paying taxes, the rest of the town are gonna pick up that slack, because the money they don't just write it off.
That's right.
So we have to pick up the money for that, which is not a deal breaker, just something to be aware of.
Yep.
Means tested using the circuit breaker. I don't know what that benchmark is, what that threshold is, but we'll need to know that.
Yep.
And being a resident of the town for 10 years, and no minor children living in the homes is how Hopkinton modified theirs. And it would just be for school building projects.
Right.
I have some philosophical,
Philosophical.
yeah, issues with, I mean, public education benefits everybody, so I deeply believe everybody should pay for it. But from a practical standpoint, I understand that this might be the last straw for some people. And if it's built right, that we're not giving a tax break to somebody who just bought $1 million home, who's 68 years old, who is a retired investment banker, I'm fine with coming up with a solution that gets around that. I believe any lawyer can structure anything to make it look like my income is almost nothing if I have enough income to hire the right lawyer. But if it's handled right, I think this is a benefit to the town. I still do believe firmly public education is paid for by the public, but if there are people who are in dire straits, who've lived in the town their entire lives, or at least 10 years, then I think there is a consideration to be had. But it's going to have to pass at town meeting. This won't impact people at Glen Ellen because they haven't been here 10 years in those homes and their income's probably too high. But
And I
it would
believe
have.
they have to file, do they have to file every year? Is that
Yeah.
Every year they have
Every
to
year they have
apply
to
for the
file.
waiver every year.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it would affect that many people to tip the scales so much on the rest.
Right.
But we could do a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
We can certainly do more research and find out how many people currently qualify or apply
Right.
for and receive that tax
That circuit breaker.
Right.
Yeah, because I'm all in favor of helping those that truly need the help with it. I
Right.
just want to make sure it's not something that can be used by people who just moved here, bought $1 million home and manipulate it. So
Right.
they're not paying taxes and I'm picking up the slack for them. But I don't mind helping out my neighbors who
What do
truly,
you think,
truly need
Erin?
it.
You like it?
I agree with Craig.
As long as it, as long as it.
I never hear
Well
that. Can you
said.
say that again?
I know. As long as it is.
If there's, I think if the right parameters are in place and there's true hardship, that, and
Yeah.
it sounds like it wouldn't impact, it wouldn't be a global impact of any scale in terms of who would qualify for this. So I think it's possibly a fair consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do a little bit more work on it. Okay. It's just another way to
Yeah.
get through this.
And it will help those that are truly in need, not the ones that are, yeah.
I know.
Yeah, and
We know
who,
that.
so it'll help those truly in need, and it won't give a workaround for those that
Aren't,
may not be in need.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, next. We want to talk about another, what we're considering here. So, the town clerk position is currently an elected position. And we've been talking for many, many years now, way before my time, of making it appointed. And we believe that now is the time. So, do we want to have a little discussion on the pros and cons, or what do we want to do?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Anybody? Mike, you want to start? Because you have some pretty
Sure,
strong.
I just
You've
did a
been
little,
around.
yes, I just did a little research, at least from the perspective of Millis, just to provide a little context and history for those that may not have followed along as closely. The town did establish a charter review committee, which was appointed by the moderator a number of years ago. And one of the results of that study and one of their core recommendations was to change the position of the elected town clerk to an appointed town clerk. Really were a number of reasons for that recommendation, including the increasing workload and the growing complexity of the position, the legal ramifications associated with the functions of that office. There have been a growing number of communities that have taken the step of over the last 15 or 20 years of making that step, especially larger, more progressive communities. And then the town also chartered a study by Community Paradigm Associates in 2019 to look at the best way to move the town clerk's office fully into the 21st century. And I'll read briefly a quote from from the report.
Yep.
One of the key findings was that historically, the town clerk has primarily acted as a record keeper, such things as birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, dog licenses, and has coordinated elections and town meetings. But in today's world, the position has evolved into a more multifaceted and diverse position. The town clerks of today must keep abreast of the ever-changing statutes and requirements of the position, conflict of interest laws, open meeting laws, ethics laws, early voting changes, town meeting regulations, and must maintain up-to-date training. Full-time town clerk would provide the residents, businesses, and other town departments with a staff person dedicated to the function of the office and provide other ancillary services. I do have a draft town clerk position in the packet. Concurrent with the value decision of having a full-time town clerk, the position should then be appointed rather than elected, where the two primary reasons for doing so would be, number one, continuity. As an elected position, the town clerk can change out every 3 years. Given the nature of the position and the need to become properly trained, this turnover could be unnecessarily disruptive to the town. The tenure and expertise of the town clerk could be better managed through an appointment process. And the second one is accountability. Currently, the town clerk is elected and as such is only accountable to the electorate once every 3 years. Thus, voters can affect changes in this position and how it operates every 3 years. As an appointed position, the town clerk would be accountable to the select board, the town administrator, and more importantly, to the townspeople daily. Some may argue that an appointed town clerk, while overseeing elections of individual members of the select board, may act in a manner prejudicial to those who have appointed him or her. There has been no documented evidence to support such a claim in any municipality in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts which has appointed a town clerk. And just talking about the process, I know we've talked about this before because it has gone to town meeting in the past. The process involves the approval of a warrant article at a town meeting, which authorized the select board to petition the state legislature to enact a special act to effectuate this change. The select board could also have the option of placing a ballot question on the annual election ballot, which isn't legally required, but it would ensure the broader community is in support of the change. Just to let you know, I did add a draft warrant article within your packet this evening under the draft annual town meeting warrant. So if the board were to decide to put this item on the annual election ballot, you would need to make that decision by your next regular meeting on March 31st in order to meet the 35-day deadline prior to the annual election. So.
Comments?
Yes.
Comments?
I firmly believe this needs to be an appointed position, and I'd like to see it on the town meeting warrant as well as on the ballot. I do think the accountability is a big one. I think right now, if for instance, the clerk wasn't filing things with the state that needed to be filed in a timely fashion, nobody would know that. The voters wouldn't know that. There's no way that they would know that. And there needs to be oversight. It needs to be a full-time department head. It needs to be, being a full-time position that is appointed, like the continuity of service so that, you're not retraining somebody. I could run for clerk if I wanted to right now, and I am not qualified to be the clerk, so.
She is not qualified to be the clerk.
So I think, I do think it needs to be an appointed position. I think now is the time to do it. We have an interim clerk right now, and I think this is perfect timing for us to look to make it appointed.
Yeah, I agree with everything Aaron said. Oh, there we go. I will add one thing to it.
The mutual society here, right?
No, I agree with all that, but the other point is, I think we do have to make sure we do stipulate that we will have an election on it.
Yes.
I think it's important that
Agreed.
we go through the process so everybody believes it was fair, above board, and even though it's not required, having an election is probably going to give the best impression that everything was done in the proper way.
Yes, yes.
So I'm not gonna, because I'd rather have it overkill than not done in a way that some perceive as improper. The other piece with it, going back when I very first started in the FinCom, we had an elected town accountant who wasn't an accountant. It was an elected position, and we got a lot of letters from Department of Revenue. So that was changed to an appointed position 30-plus years ago. So I mean, I just had started when that happened. So there is precedent for moving from elected to appointed, and with the appointment, you get people very skilled in the job to do it, not somebody running like
Right.
myself who would sit at
Right,
the window
and
and
if they're
chat to
not
people.
skilled in the job, then you
Yeah.
replace them.
In defense of the current model we have, you can only expect so much from somebody that's getting a $12,000 a year stipend. Like, this is not their full-time job. It can't be their full-time job unless they happen to be independently wealthy and retired. You know, so I think it's unfair to expect somebody to do the job justice in the current model,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
I have a different reason for wanting it. I've said this before, that everybody in Millis wears a million hats. Everybody chips in. If you need help over here, you go over across the hall and you help. In the town clerk's office, it's no different. If you have an elected official that's there or not there, that isn't willing to help out, then you now are limiting all your resources. Things are not getting, there are a lot of things that we don't see. There are things that need to be filed by a certain date. And if somebody who's elected doesn't want to do that, then they simply don't do that. So the appointed people down there that are on salary, they got to jump in, they got to leave their whole pile of work. We all work together. And to have somebody elected that doesn't really have to answer to anybody, it doesn't work in this kind of a town. If we had a town that we had 7 people in the clerk's office, and you had the clerk over there just, you do that, that good, that you do that, that's okay. We don't have that, we don't work that way. Everybody got to chip in, and you can't have different people not answering the call. So that's my sense of why we need to make this change, and now's the perfect time.
Yeah, and the timing works, as she said, the timing.
Perfect. So, and I do agree, we do it belts and suspenders, right? Let everybody
And put that in the motion, when
Weigh
we write
in.
the motion, just so it's no argument on it.
belts and suspenders.
Putting that in the motion.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I like that.
And
Get up, please.
Lost all patience after 9 o'clock. And we got executive session next, I'm just kind of scared.
Oh, my God.
By doing this, then the elected, appointed official would be then under the scope of the town administrator
Yes,
Yeah.
and the select board.
and the
every
select
other
board.
department head.
So it would not be somebody who could just willy-nilly decide what they want to do
Right.
and when they want to do
But
it.
here's an interesting thing, Mike, you should talk about if it does pass, there's a year gap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so.
People should know.
Just to talk about the timeline of the process, should the town meeting approve the article, and should the voters at the annual election approve the ballot question, the board would then send that request for the special act up to the state. Generally, the state does very little quickly.
You-
So generally, these processes take a minimum of 1 year. So if we were to submit that to the state, say by late May, at the earliest, I would think June of '26 would be the earliest we could see probably a signed special act by the governor.
So in the meantime, what happens to those folks who
So in the
are
meantime,
in their roles?
In the meantime.
Are they considered acting?
In the meantime, it's basically unchanged.
Okay.
So there is an election for the town clerk, and that individual that wins that seat will be in there as the elected town clerk, at least until,
It gets certified.
in that position as an elected town clerk, at least until the special act is approved by the legislature.
And they work down there 40 hours and 30 hours, is it? The two
The
girls?
two staff, the two staff currently, one is again, the acting.
Acting.
And the other is the assistant town clerk. They would, yeah, they basically 40 and 30 hours is roughly where they're at currently, because
And-
it's just the two of them.
Would the assistant town clerk's position change? Would she be, is there anything about elected or appointed with her? Or is she,
Not for the
was there
assistant.
ever?
Not for the assistant.
Okay, just for the
So I would
town
Do
clerk.
we
think.
know what that even looks like yet?
No, there's a lot of variables, so I hate to get
Right.
over my skis
That's
over
okay,
over
I
that one.
just-
But I will say that I would think that at a minimum, that office should be staffed with one 40-hour and one 30-hour person, the equivalent.
Right.
But how that's all gonna exactly wash out once the process is complete is hard to tell. But I think the staffing level would at least require that.
But the assistant has always been a hired. It's always,
Yes, the only
yeah,
person that's
okay.
ever been elected is actually the town clerk.
Okay.
All the other individuals are appointed in those roles.
Very good, thank you.
So just clarification on the timeline of it then. So if it passes a town meeting to be appointed, and then submitted to the state in May, as you said, and we wait a year to June of '26, is there a next waiting period, or could that be implemented right away? Is there another phase, or is?
No, once
In
the
this
special act,
example.
once the special act is approved, it goes into effect, I believe, 30 days after
Okay.
the special act is signed by the governor.
Gotcha.
And we can put it on the May ballot question, because we'll be
For
voting town meeting.
2026.
No, for
No,
2025.
25.
Okay, so we can all do it
voting
this-
So the only
this prior
step-
to the, yeah.
The only step will remain after the election will be the legislature
Right.
approving it. That's the only remaining
Gotcha.
step.
Okay.
And certainly, there's a lot of little details that have to
Okay.
be worked out for the operation of the office. But the big issue here is getting the, legal authority
Yeah.
to make that
So all that
change.
work's getting done now, and then basically, if everything followed along and passed and then certified out by the state, then it would go into effect.
Right, and we have every reason to believe that if it was passed at town meeting and the ballot election, it would get approved by the state. It's just a matter of the amount of time it takes to get it done.
Now, interestingly, as long as the person's acting as elected, there's no accountability, but the minute it gets approved by, you know where I'm going with this? The minute it gets approved by the state, now, there's total accountability. It's a joke. I can see you're tired, John. I can see you're,
do change after 9, already.
We got to go into that room privately. It's going to be ugly, John.
I think Joyce got the joke. Okay, so, any more discussion on it? Anybody? Anybody? Okay, discuss, what do we got here?
So I'm requesting that the board open the annual town meeting warrant.
I move that the board open the warrant for the spring annual town meeting scheduled for Monday, May 5th, 2025.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
So, Madam Chair, in the board's packet, I
Yeah.
do have a memo, as well as a draft warrant with 21 articles as of this date. If you'd like, I can just briefly touch upon those.
Touch away.
Again, there are 21 articles on the draft warrant. The first 7 articles are pretty much our standard annual town meeting articles, consisting of unpaid bills, additional wages and expenses, our operating budget, water enterprise fund, sewer enterprise fund, stormwater enterprise fund, and the consent agenda, which is Article 7. Article
Yep.
7 does contain some changes to the fiscal year expenditure limits for the 2 of the revolving funds. Those revolving funds are
Stray animal.
the
account?
Animal Control Shelter Fund and the Board of Health Food Fund, and we do have one request for an additional fund, the COA Program Services Fund. And I believe
Is
that's
it the COA Program Services Fund
fund.
or fund?
No, that's a typo on
Oh,
my
is that a
memo.
typo?
I hope it's fun.
Because I think
I hope it's fun. It's, on the front it is,
That
but if you
makes
look
me
at the
faster.
warrant, it's spelled correctly. So I think that's a $6,000 cap on that one.
Yeah.
So those are the changes to that. Obviously, I think at the next meeting, we will be talking about the personnel plan and some minor tweaks. We're looking at that, as well as the COLA decision of the board. Now that we're hopefully going to be wrapping up some contracts soon, union contracts. Article 8 is our capital project article that contains 7 items for the board's review. The projects have been reviewed and ranked by the CPC, whose chair will be presenting their report to you at your next regular meeting on March 31st. Article 9 authorizes the lease borrowing for 2 new police cruisers. The funding for those cruisers is actually contained in the police department's FY26 operational budget request. But because the lease is considered a borrowing under state law, it does require a separate article with a 2/3 majority approval of the town meeting. Article 10 proposes the consideration of a special act to establish a means-tested senior citizen property tax exemption. I think we talked about it at length earlier
We
this
did,
evening.
I read the article that's in there. Can we please put a clause in that no minor, like Hopkinton amended on town meeting floor, that no minor children reside in the household?
Sure.
Because that was added on town meeting floor, and I'm just trying to avoid adding it.
What do you think what's the policy decision behind that?
Well, I think someone felt if there was children still going to school from the house,
They should probably
the house
pay
should
for
still
school.
pay,
Yeah,
the house should still pay
didn't even
towards
make
the
that
education,
there you go.
regardless
Yeah.
of the other status.
Interesting. Okay.
Article 11 proposes the consideration of a special act to change the position of the town clerk from elected to appointed. We just discussed that. Article 12 proposes a change
Yep.
to the town's general bylaws by establishing a
Great.
permanent tri-board committee as recommended by the Financial Management Review, recently conducted by the Department of Revenue's Division of Local Services. Article 13 proposes a change to the town's general bylaws by establishing the position of traffic constables, which will be authorized to work police details for the town. That was requested by the police chief. This is related to the new post laws.
Okay.
And has to do with the fact that the constables would not be under the same rules and regulations of post.
What's
They're-
post?
The police, this was enacted back in 2021. I don't know the whole acronym off the top of my head, I probably should.
Okay.
But it's all the new laws related to police training, police oversight, tracking of any police
Okay.
misconduct. It's a much higher bar than usually needed for detail officers, so it's something that the chief said many towns are moving
Okay.
towards this. Article 14 would authorize the select board to dispose and sell of certain town-owned parcels of land. This
So-
is the remaining pieces of land. I believe there were 2 pieces of land.
That, we
Um,
passed
that-
it last time.
Right.
Where are we with those?
It's on your agenda this evening. We'll get to that.
Oh, we're not there yet.
No.
Okay.
So all the remaining parcels that are appropriate for disposal, we would need to have the town meeting to authorize the board to dispose of those. So these are the remaining parcels.
Okay,
So-
great.
So we'll be working on that list over the next 2 weeks, finalizing that.
Okay.
Article 15 would amend the special flood hazard district within the town zoning bylaws to be in compliance with the new FEMA flood insurance rate maps
Yeah.
that were just put in place a few months ago. Article 16 would amend zoning bylaws related to accessory dwelling units in response to the recent MBTA legislation. The board earlier
Yep,
this evening
ADUs.
actually referred that bylaw back to the planning board. Now, Articles 17 through 21 are standard articles that are regularly addressed at town meetings. The unemployment fund, the 111F injury fund, OPEB fund, and the stabilization fund.
Yep.
We will have additional information regarding these articles, which will be provided to you over the next 2 weeks. I expect to have some minor tweaks at your meeting in 2 weeks. So with that, I just wanted to find out if there were any comments, questions, if there's any thoughts about, there are any articles missing, or if there are any articles that you feel should be removed, or you just want to hold any other comments to the 31st, but this is where we are currently on our draft.
Are we missing anything?
I I think that sounds good. I'll look it over. I think that's got everything I was thinking we needed.
I mean, you can certainly have another full-blown discussion at
Yeah.
your next meeting on the
Okay.
31st,
I'll think about
but
it.
this is the
I think
first
it's
draft.
everything.
Yeah.
And I'll be sending this to the Finance Committee tomorrow, so they can
Okay.
start taking
I'll
a
look at
look
my
at it,
notes.
even though there are pieces of it that still need details
Yep.
plugged in, but.
Okay.
I move that the board accept the articles as listed in the draft annual town meeting warrant contained in the agenda packet into the warrant for the spring annual town meeting scheduled for May 5th, 2025.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous.
I move that the board close the warrant for the spring annual town meeting scheduled for Monday, May 5th, 2025.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous.
Thank you. Madam Chair, in your packet, there's some information regarding the 2 parcels that the town meeting authorized the board to dispose of
Yep.
at the spring town meeting. So with that, I'm recommending that the board vote to declare those 2 parcels as surplus so that we can move forward with the proper sale process.
I move that the board declare parcels 21-012-000 and 40-100-000 recorded with the Norfolk County Registry of Deeds in Book 5470, page 77, and in Book 2773, page 2045, as surplus property available for disposition by sale in accordance with Articles 10 and 11 of the November 2024 Fall Annual Town Meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
And just to point out that parcel that's 1.3 acres for $30,000 assessed value, that's $500 more to the tax rate. There's new growth.
There you go, right there.
That's the landlocked, that's the landlocked.
Yeah, that's the
Yes.
stuff up in,
Yeah.
Millis
That I
Heights.
presented in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's the, Mike, do you know the next step? Does it get published?
Yes, we will be advertising it on our website
Okay.
and through a local process. So I wouldn't expect it would take another month to go through that process.
Okay.
So we will see what bids we receive, and that'll come back before the board for a final decision.
So in the advertisement, is there any money listed?
That's a good question. I think we will list what the assessed value of the property is.
Okay,
That's
good.
what, that's what we list.
Okay.
And that was what I looked up.
Did you look up Post?
I did.
What is it?
It's a place where police officers
No,
stay. That's
it's,
what AI said.
Peace Officer Standards and Training
Yes, that's it.
Commission.
Peace Officer Standard and
That
Training.
probably makes a lot more sense than
Than
a
yours?
police post,
Yeah.
where we post police officers to stay and work.
Okay, next. What do we got next?
The next one, Madam Chair, is a request to approve an event for the Recreation Department
Yep.
for Carnival and Fireworks. There is a memo in your packet from the Recreation Director, Chris Fogarty. Dear Select Board, the Millis Recreation Department would like permission to hold its annual carnival at the town park from June 26th to 29th, 2025, with Finelli Amusement Company. The Millis Recreation Department would also like to request that the plumbing, electrical permits be waived. The board had already took care of that in the policy. There's no
yep.
need for the board to formally act on that here. In the Recreation Department, Chief Barrett and John Engler are working with Pyrotechnico of New Hampshire to have the fireworks display at the high school baseball field on Saturday, June 28th, 2025 at 9:30 PM. So just requesting the approval of that event.
Okay, well, last year was fabulous. So
It
if
was.
this year is anything like that, I'm all for it.
I move that the board authorize the Millis Recreation Department to hold its annual carnival at the town park from June 26th through the 29th, 2025, with Finelli Amusement Company.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Liaisons.
Liaison, actually, there's one more contract, Madam Chair. There is a memo in your packet from Jim Donovan, the Director of IT.
The fiber optic.
Yeah.
Yes, as previously approved by the Select Board, the town of Millis did secure grant funding sufficient to cover the entire cost of a fiber optic municipal area network expansion project. This initiative will extend critical connectivity to several municipal locations, including the fire station, library, Department of Public Works, and the transfer station. The upgraded network infrastructure will significantly enhance communication capabilities, providing robust support for voice and data systems, camera systems, and notably improving security for SCADA systems and other essential town services. Within your packet is the final proposal detailing the project's scope and associated costs. The director respectfully requests that the select board authorize contract signing, allowing the town to proceed with implementation of the project.
How much was the grant that he got?
I believe the whole grant was $150,000.
Yeah, that's great.
That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. Who got that, Jim?
Jim got it.
Jim
Great work,
Morgan.
Jim.
Yeah,
I know he's listening.
there you go.
I
Good job,
know,
Jim.
he better
Good job,
listen,
Jim.
right? Good job. Unbelievable. Okay, go ahead.
I move that the board approve a contract with Comtract to expand the fiber optic municipal area network in the town of Millis for an amount not to exceed $120,004.65, and to authorize the town administrator to sign the contract on behalf of the board.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Great, thank you. Now liaison updates.
Liaisons. Got anything?
School Building Committee and 2 capital planning, but I'm not going to say anything about them because school building, we've talked about to death. Capital planning's coming in next meeting, and I don't want to spoil the surprise.
I went to community preservation. It was more just housekeeping to
In other
prepare
words, you're not
for,
prepared.
I could go on and on about it, Joyce, but there's no point in taking up the time at 9:30 at night.
Oh, my God.
Ellen, what do you have?
I had, I didn't talk about the energy that I did last time. I had the energy thing and then the energy forum at the Roach Room at the library. Do you know anything about it? Anyway, it was very good. Not that many people went,
I was
but
there.
you were there, Joyce. It was good. I learned a lot. What did I learn about? I learned a lot about composting.
Yes.
We talked a lot about composting at my table, but it was very good. It's part of the Energy Committee's initiatives to get us to net zero by 2050. And they talked about, solar and wastewater and composting, and it was a workshop thing, which was pretty good. Other than that, I went to the sewer commission on Thursday. Nothing, we haven't hooked on anything. And then we talked to Verizon this afternoon, renegotiating their contract. But that's about it.
Okay.
Is that it? Are we done?
No,
Executive
we have,
session?
no.
Oh,
No.
sewer commitment.
So, Madam Chair, I'm recommending that the board approve and sign the Water Sewer Department commitment to the collector for February of 2025 in the amount of $1,596.40.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous?
And Madam Chair, I recommend that the board approve and sign the Water Sewer Department commitment to the collector for the third quarter of fiscal year 2025 in the amount of $977,378.31.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
I move that the board enter into executive session for the following purpose, and only re-enter open session for the purpose of
Thanks, Joan.
adjourning: to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the government's bargaining or litigating position. Also to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel: SEIU, fire, police, DPW, dispatch, and police chief.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'm going to poll the board. Erin?
Aye.
Craig?
Aye.
I'm an aye. So moved. We good?
Yes.
Executive session it is? Perfect.
All right.
That's good.
Thank you.
A lot.